Chapter 1375. No matter what you do now, there's no turning back. It's time for you to pay back your sins. Hehe. I know that I've been utterly defeated. Yes, I've failed. Still, do you think I'll let you off just because you said this? There was a hint of hysteria and madness in his smile, as if he had been possessed by a demon. Even if I'm going to die here tonight, you'll die with me and be buried with me. This was his character. Even if he was destroyed, he would drag others down to hell with him. At the very least, it would not be a loss if he dragged Mu Linfeng down with him. If he could drag Yun Tianyu down with him, then this deal would be worth it. Mu Lianjue opened his bloodshot eyes and stared fixedly at Yu Yu, who was standing in front of him, with a sinister smile. Yu Yu, who was standing in front of him with his hands behind his back, was as elegant as a little gentleman. He had a delicate and handsome face and was as adorable as snow. His features were extremely similar to Yun Shishir's and, similarly, Mu Yaja's charm. This child was Yun Shishir's true love and Mu Yaja's most beloved son. Since Mu Yaja wanted to destroy him, he would not let him off, either. If he wanted to die, he would not let Mu Yaja have an easy time, either. At the thought of this, his lips trembled, and a hard object could be vaguely seen squirming under his lips. Suddenly, he hooked his tongue and bit on a remote control device in his mouth. A maniacal hatred flashed across his eyes. Yu Yu was startled by his sudden action. He furrowed his brows in puzzlement. However, when he saw the remote control device between his lips, his heart skipped a beat and his face froze. What was that? It was a small remote control device. It was pocket-sized, yet he had been holding it in his mouth all this time. What is this? He questioned in a low voice, full of wariness. Hehe. Yun Tianyu, you're so smart. You should be able to guess what this is, right? Mu Lianjue's eyes were bloodshot as he held the remote in his hand. Come here and I'll tell you what this is. Yu Yu frowned and said coldly, Why should I go there? Mu Lianjue smiled sinisterly and spat. Of course, if I press this button, you will lose your dear mommy and brother forever. Yu Yu was stunned. Her face turned pale and she asked in disbelief, What did you say? What? You don't believe me? Mu Lianjue's eyes were filled with mockery as he gripped the remote control tightly in his hand. His face was full of viciousness as he bellowed hysterically, He, I have already sent someone to plant an explosive device in your house. If I press this button, there will be a bang. Take a guess. What will become of your gentle mommy and adorable brother? He sneered as he enjoyed the sight of Yun Tianyu's face, which was constantly changing color. He smugly said, With one explosion, they'll be brutally blasted into a bloody mess. Their heads will be separated from their bodies, and they'll die without a burial place. Yu Yu's face turned ghastly white in an instant. Mu Linfeng's eyes were filled with disbelief when he heard this. He was crazy. This person was completely deranged. Mu Lianjue was crazy. How could he do such a crazy thing? Chapter 1376. Vermilion Bird sized up Mu Lianjue's sinister expression and hurried to Yu Yu's side. Squatting down, she whispered into his ear, Director Yun, calm down. Don't believe him so easily. This man might be trying to trick you. She told him all the worries in her heart. She did not know what he was holding in his hand, either. Could that button really be a remote control device for the explosion? No one knew, and no one knew the truth. Perhaps what he said was true. As long as he pressed the button, his home would instantly explode into a sea of fire with an earth-shattering explosion. Yun Shishir and Muichen would also be mercilessly reduced to ashes, their flesh and blood splattering everywhere. Perhaps his words were just to trick him. There was no explosive device or remote control device. His goal was to trick him into using him as a hostage. He knew very well that the person who wanted his life this time was Mu Yaja. To Mu Yaja, Yun Tianyu was more valuable as a hostage than Mu Linfeng. Director Yun, calm down. Don't be nervous. Perhaps he's just saying that to trick you. Yu Yu sucked in a deep breath of cold air and said in a low voice, I suspect so too. He was so smart. How could he not have thought of this? His concern made him confused. Mu Lianjue was making use of this opportunity. As the saying went, all was fair in war. The man might be using an illusion to confuse him to achieve his goal. Alas, he did not dare to do so. He did not dare to gamble with Yun Shishir and Mu Yichen's lives. No one dared to guarantee, nor was anyone clear, what the hell was the button he was holding tightly in his hand at this moment. Perhaps nothing would happen if he pressed it. Perhaps, as he said, he would really lose his mother and brother forever if he pressed it. Yu Yu had always been bold and unconventional, but at this moment, he had really lost his courage. It was very difficult for him to gamble with Yun Shishir and Mu Yichen's lives. Even so, despite his anxiety, he maintained a calm expression as he scrutinized the man unblinkingly. His face showed no signs of wavering as he carefully scrutinized the man, trying hard to find any suspicious signs on his face. What? You don't believe me? Do you really think I'm coaxing you? If you don't believe me, why don't you give it a try? Mu Lianjue said as he raised the control button in his hand and pretended to press it. Yu Yu finally could not hold himself back and raised his voice to stop him. Wait! Mu Lianjue's lips curled into a triumphant smirk the moment he said that. Then, come over here. Be good and come to me. Mu Lianjue was like an evil demon as he patiently enticed him. Come here, good boy. Come to me. Yu Yu pursed his lips tightly. He had just taken a step forward when Lisa suddenly blocked his path. He's lying to you. Lisa lowered her voice and stared at him with a pair of cold eyes. Her face was alarmed. Don't go over. Move aside. Yu Yu smiled elegantly. Lisa, move aside. I can't let you take the risk. Lisa's tone was stiff, but she had no intention of giving in. She couldn't just watch him throw his life away. Chapter 1377. Who knew what earth-shattering things he would do in a fit of hysteria? Likewise, I don't dare to take the risk. I can't let Mommy and Big Brother be in danger. Yu Yu paused and looked at her. Don't worry. You're on standby at any time. I know what to do. No. Lisa was adamant to the end. She was certain that the so-called explosive device in the man's hand was just an empty shell that did not work at all. It was just a last-ditch effort. He was making use of Yu Yu's weakness. He knew that the child was eager to protect his mother and would not watch her fall into danger. Yu Yu calmly asked, then, what if it's real? What if it was really an explosive device if he pressed it? Lisa choked all of a sudden. Vermilion Bird's eyes flickered as she whispered in his ear. Sir, we have a sniper 100 meters away on standby. It's too late. Yu Yu knitted his brows. The sniper crouched 100 meters away on standby. However, he would not act rashly if he did not receive the order to shoot. If he were to give the order now, it would only alert the enemy. If Mu Lianjue wanted to kill him before he could press the button with the intention of perishing together, there would be an accident. He could not condone even a 1 in a million accident. I'll give you 3 seconds. He gave his ultimatum and started counting down. 1. Master Yu. Lisa did not back down. Yu Yu stared into her eyes and said word by word, Get out of my way. 2. Lisa fiercely bit her lips, and then suddenly rubbed her messy forehead, and unwillingly moved out of the way. 3. Mu Lianjue raised the button in his hand high in the air. Yu Yu suddenly raised his voice. Fourth great uncle, let's negotiate. I don't have the patience to negotiate with you, he said coldly. Yu Yu smiled. Fourth great uncle, I'm willing to be your hostage now, but don't you dare play any tricks. Otherwise, I don't have the patience either. The man pondered for a moment and then smiled sinisterly. Fine. I'm warning you, though. Don't play any tricks. Otherwise, we'll just perish together. Yu Yu smiled. With your words, how can I dare to play any tricks? After saying that, he raised his arrogant chin and walked towards him. Mu Lianjue looked at him greedily, as if he was a malicious spirit standing at the mouth of purgatory and showing his ugly face. Mu Linfeng's face's expression. Bees. How could this child have such extraordinary courage? In order to protect his beloved family, he actually didn't hesitate to put himself in danger. Putting everything else aside, just this point alone made him admire him from the bottom of his heart. To be simple. It seemed that he had still underestimated this child. While he was still in a daze, Yu walked up to Mu Lianjue. The latter grabbed him by the collar and dragged him to his side. At the same time, he kicked Mu Linfeng out. Caught off guard, Mu Linfeng fell to the ground in a wretched state, landing on his face like a dog in the mud. Mu Lianjue grabbed Yu Yu's throat with one hand. In an instant, all the members of Mercenary Paradise were on alert. They stared at Mu Lianjue vigilantly and were on standby at any time. Chapter 1378. Even Mu Linfeng felt ashamed of himself when he saw her composed expression. "Aren't you afraid?" Mu Lianjue narrowed his eyes and gripped his neck hard. Yu Yu's body was curvaceous, and his neck, in particular, was as elegant and charming as a swan. Such a beautiful neck. It should be a heart-wrenching thing to break, right? He said viciously. "As long as I exert more strength, you won't be able to keep your life. Are you really not afraid? You can try." Yu Yu smiled elegantly, completely unfazed by his threat. "I want to live, and so do you. What value do I have to you if I die?" Mu Lianjue cocked a brow and sneered, his eyes turning more ruthless. "You're right. You're a smart child. However, if anything happens to me tonight, you won't be able to leave this place alive, either. Fourth granduncle, since I'm in your hands now, you should get rid of that device in your hand. Don't be an eyesore." Yu Yu sneered, his face full of disgust. As soon as he said that, Mu Lianjue's eyes darkened. He raised the small device in his hand and smashed it to the ground, shattering it into pieces. Yu Yu's eyes darkened. He was startled for a moment, but in the next moment, a look of understanding flashed across his eyes. It seemed that, as he had expected, the device in Mu Lianjue's hand was just a smokescreen to lure him. It was useless. What explosive device? It was just nonsense. Vermilion Bird stood at the side and watched as Mu Lianjue smashed the device to the ground. She heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that it was just a useless component. It was a false alarm. Yu Yu was relieved too. The rock in his heart finally fell to the ground. His face remained expressionless as he stared at the device he had smashed to pieces on the ground. Behind him, Mu Lianjue shouted smugly, This is just a simple mechanical device. It's useless. It's just a toy to scare a child. How could you believe it? I thought that a 7-year-old child could be smart, but it seems that this is all there is to it." Vermilion Bird choked when she heard that. She tried her best to stifle her laughter and pursed her lips, pretending to be cool. Lisa, who was standing at the side, looked even colder and more disdainful. Yu Yu's eyes shone brightly. "Is that so? Fourth granduncle, you lied to me that it's an explosive device, and I really believed it. How naughty! To lie to a child's face. Mu Lianjue's smile was tinged with pleasure as he gripped the boy's neck. He unscrupulously enjoyed the latter's feigned weakness and helplessness. His wrinkled fingers traced the boy's cheeks before he grabbed the gun and pressed the muzzle against the latter's temple. His gaze was sinister and vicious. And Yu Yu sneered inwardly. He was not afraid of tigers, but he was not a calf. He was the king of beasts. Chapter 1379. Fourth granduncle, you adults are so bad. How could you bully a child? How pitiful that I actually believed you. Now that I'm in your hands, I'm so angry. He mewled like a little lamb and complained aggrievedly. For some reason, Yu Yu's words made Vermilion Bird's hair stand on end. Yu Yu was so scary. He was clearly the worst and most scheming one. On the surface, he was being held hostage and controlled by Mu Lianjue. But what about it? Yu Yu looked weak on the surface, but in reality, he had sharp claws and fangs hidden behind his back. Poor Mu Lianjue. Did he really think that he had the upper hand in this situation? Yun Tianyu merely took pity on him and wanted to play along with him. When he confirmed that the device was just an ordinary one, he secretly made a hand gesture to it. Vermilion Bird secretly sent out a signal, but it was still unable to kill the man on the spot. The situation was in a stalemate because he had a gun in his hand. Vermilion Bird planned to stall for time and kill the man the moment he let his guard down. Mu Lianjue was completely unaware of Yu Yu's scheme and the situation he was in. He was still extremely pleased with himself. He, a child is indeed a child. You actually believed me with just a few words. Still, you're really bold to barge into the tiger's den. Fourth granduncle, do you dare to kill me? Yu Yu smiled provocatively as his eyes turned cold. Do you dare to hurt a single strand of my hair? Why not? Mu Lianjue pinched his cheeks viciously. You can't die yet, though. I'll spare your life before you cover my escape. Fourth granduncle, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't struggle anymore. You've lost. Accept your fate. Yu Yu gave him an ultimatum out of pity. Just as he said that, not far away, two dazzling lights suddenly appeared. They were slowly approaching the southern entrance. Everyone present was on high alert. Vermilion Bird followed the light and saw an Audi A8 approaching from afar. She especially noticed that this car had a J background license plate. Presumably, its origin was not simple. Behind the Audi A8 there were several other cars. The Audi A8 stopped steadily at the south entrance. Everyone looked over. In his line of sight, a tall and slender figure slowly stepped out of the car. Wuxia stepped out of the car and stood tall and straight. His body was tall and slender. Invisibly, an awe-inspiring aura spread out in an instant. His body exuded a very terrifying aura. This kind of aura was enough to make anyone feel fear. When Yu Yu saw him, she was confused at first. She did not understand why he was here. When Wuxia saw Yu Yu, he was stunned. He did not expect to see such a strange situation when he rushed over. Why was he here? Both father and son had the same question almost at the same time. Daddy, why are you here? Yu Yu was the first to ask with a look of astonishment. Just as he opened his mouth, Mu Lianjue grabbed him by the throat and roared, "Shut up!" Wuxia's arrival made him raise his guard. Yu Yu could not hide his shock despite being choked. Chapter 1380. He cursed inwardly in his heart and connected the dots. A white light flashed in his mind, and he suddenly suspected that Vice Captain Zhou's mercenary group had been sent by Daddy. If that was the case, did it not mean that he had made a huge mistake? He thought that Mu Lianjue was about to be smuggled out of the country, so he rushed over to kidnap him. He did not expect that the father and son would bump into each other. Wuxia, who had obviously guessed this, was slightly taken aback. He was indeed his son. He actually thought of the same thing as him. Vermilion Bird broke out in cold sweat as well. What was going on? It turned out that the vice captain was Wuxia's men. They had been busy all day, but they did not expect him to be one of them. Vermilion Bird could not help glancing at the vice captain. The latter also reacted and looked at him pitifully. There was a hint of sympathy in their eyes. It turned out that he was one of them. Yu Yu's face darkened for a moment. Daddy, what a coincidence. Wuxia glanced at Vermilion Bird and then at the calm Yu Yu. First, he was a little alarmed. After all, the sight of Yu Yu with a gun pointed at his son's temple was a little nerve-wracking. However, when he caught a glimpse of Yu Yu's sinister smile and the calm Vermilion Bird, he knew that this was Yu Yu's wicked game. Thus, he heaved a sigh of relief. He smiled and could not help but tease. My good son, it's already so late. What are you doing here instead of sleeping at home? Yu Yu replied innocently, I want to help Daddy catch the bad guys. Wuxia was delighted by his son's reply. My good son is so filial. Of course, it's only right for a son to be filial to his father. Yu Yu said matter-of-factly. Mu Lianjue's face darkened. The father-son pair was echoing each other, clearly ignoring his deterrence. Shut up, all of you. Do you think this is child's play? Mu Lianjue found the scene before him very strange. The father and son teased each other without a trace of nervousness. Yu Yu did not look afraid at all. The gun was still pointed at his forehead. Was he not afraid? Was he not afraid of death? Or was he not afraid of being shot? Even if he wasn't afraid of him shooting, wasn't he afraid that the gun would go off accidentally? Please. Yu was clearly his hostage, but why did he feel like he was the trapped beast? Can't you be more serious? He was the one who kidnapped Yu. Why did he feel like he was in deep trouble? Mu Linfeng was also confused. The conversation between the father and son was too relaxed and leisurely, so much so that there wasn't even the slightest sense of danger in the current situation. Shut up. Mu Lianjue could not take it anymore. Are you done? Prepare a car for me. Get the car ready. Yu looked up with a smile and said considerately, I'll prepare a hearse for you. Do you want it? Mu Lianjue was flabbergasted. Fourth uncle, have you had enough? Let me go if you're done. I want to go home and sleep. I'm so sleepy. Yu even yawned sleepily after saying that. Are you really not afraid of death? Mu Lianjue quickly loaded the gun, put his finger on the trigger, and pointed it at his temple. Do you believe that I won't shoot your head off right now? Mu Lianjue had just raised his hand when a bullet pierced through the air from a distance with a swoosh, piercing through his wrist. Mu Linfeng was stunned. Ah! Chapter 1381. Mu Lianjue let out a muffled groan. The bullet came from a long-range sniper rifle 100 meters away. Despite the distance, the bullet's lethality was shocking. When it pierced through his wrist, it caused explosive damage and caused his palm to burst open. Fresh blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Yu only felt a loud explosion above his head. After a buzzing sound, he temporarily lost his hearing. Mu Lianjue could only feel the bullet penetrating his wrist, along with the excruciating pain of broken bones. His arm went numb and he lost all feeling in it. His grip loosened, and the pistol in his hand fell to the ground. Vermilion Bird strode forward and kicked the pistol several meters away with the tip of her foot. She then carried Yu and brought him to safety. Whoosh! Another sound of a bullet piercing through the air was heard. Mu Lianjue's abdomen was mercilessly penetrated by a bullet once more. At this moment, he was practically surrounded by the long-range snipers. A total of 5 snipers were aiming at him. If he made the slightest move that was detrimental to Yu, he would be shot on the spot. Mu Lianjue groaned in pain. At that moment, he felt as if his entire body had lost its temperature. An uncontrollable chill rose from the soles of his feet, swept across his spine, and attacked his heart. It was so cold that it made one's heart numb. There seemed to be a huge force exploding in the depths of his flesh and blood where the bullet had penetrated his abdomen. At first, he only felt numbness, a hollow numbness. Soon after, he felt an intense burning sensation around his wound. Then, he felt an endless cycle of radioactive pain. The burning sensation hit his heart directly, as if he was being set ablaze in a vast expanse of land. Following that, something sticky and viscous flowed out from the wound and stained his clothes like a blooming flower. Mu Lianjue's eyes widened in disbelief. Everything happened so suddenly that he was not prepared for it at all. He only felt that the world before him had turned dark. He first wiped his wound with his hand. When he raised his hand, his palm was already red. Was it blood? He didn't hear any gunshots at all. He only felt the sound of air being sliced through from behind him. Then he was shot. Could it be that there was a sniper lying in ambush in the distance? Mu Lianjue was stunned. For a moment, he was jittery and paranoid. He abruptly turned around and tightly clutched his bleeding wound. His eyes were completely red, as if they were about to burst. However, when he saw the cold expression on Mu Yaja's face and Yu's smile, he suddenly understood everything. As it turned out, he had nowhere to run. As it turned out, he was being played like a monkey. This brat had clearly calculated everything. Just now, he had displayed such a cowardly appearance in front of him. He was simply playing the fool in front of him. Bastard! Bastard! Mu Lianjue cursed in anger. Be ****. I was actually tricked by you, you bastard. Yu looked at him coldly, then smiled deeply and said elegantly, Fourth uncle, you're stupid. With your skills, I don't even want to play with you. How boring. With that, he nonchalantly opened his palm with a cold face. Vermilion Bird, Give it to me. Chapter 1382. Yu held the gun that Vermilion Bird had passed to him. It was a Desert Eagle. The gun's body was a little heavy, but one should not underestimate it. The Desert Eagle was powerful to begin with. This pistol used high-quality ammunition, and the bullets had explosive power. He fiddled with it for a while. Previously, he had Vermilion Bird teach him some marksmanship. It was not because of anything else, but because, after the recent series of events, he knew that he had to learn some self-protection methods. This was his character. He did not like to rely on others for everything. He was too weak. If not for Xiao Chen and Lisa's protection, it would be difficult for him to protect himself. Hence, he had to learn how to protect himself and master the means to do so. In the past 2 days, he had been working hard to learn marksmanship from Vermilion Bird. Vermilion Bird was surprised to find that he was quite talented in marksmanship. He grasped it very quickly and learned how to load and shoot. Although his accuracy was not precise, it was still very high, which surprised her. Mu Yaja watched him pick up the gun and load it skillfully. Then, he raised his wrist and aimed the black muzzle at Mu Lianjue. Be it the way he held the gun or his posture, everything was very professional. This little guy secretly learned how to shoot behind his back. While Mu Yaja was surprised, he also felt impressed. Seeing him take out a gun, Mu Lianjue's face turned pale and his lips trembled violently. What are you doing? I've learned some marksmanship some time ago. What's more frustrating is that there's no one to practice with me, though. With that, Yu's lips curled up. Fourth granduncle, can you practice with me? No. His face turned pale as he turned around abruptly and tried to run away. Without another word, Yu pulled the trigger and fired 2 shots at his hind legs. Mu Lianjue let out a blood-curdling scream as he staggered to the ground. His shrill scream pierced the silence of the night and spread far and wide along the southern entrance of the vast highway. However, it soon dissipated into the biting cold wind. These 2 shots are for Uncle Zhao. If not for Mu Lianjue's assassins, Uncle Zhao would not have died that day. This was Mu Lianjue's evil debt. He had to avenge the Zhao clan. With that, Yu fired again. 2 more shots rang out. Mu Lianjue let out another blood-curdling scream as he clutched his wounded knee in pain. His whole body twitched violently as he rolled around on the ground in pain. Mu Yaja glanced at his son. At this moment, Yu was standing in the bone-chilling night breeze. His back was straight and his entire body was cold. He turned sideways. His black hair was slightly messy in the evening breeze, brushing against his cheeks and intertwining with his thick eyelashes. Her originally snow-white and cute face was incomparably deep. Her pair of gloomy and dark eyes seemed to be covered in ice and snow, without any warmth. His marksmanship was standard. When he fired, his face was cold and emotionless, as if it were just a routine. Even when he heard Mu Lianjue's screams, he did not move at all. He blinked as if he was already numb to death. He appeared so callous. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. In fact, he was not so willing to let Yu come into contact with such dark things too early. Chapter 1383. However, perhaps because he had experienced too many frightening things, Mu Yaja felt that it was time for him to come into contact with these things. Back then, when he arranged for Xiao Chen to be sent to the army for training, he was met with opposition. However, he still threw the little fellow into the special training camp without hesitation, just so that he could strengthen his physique to a greater extent and train him. Now, Xiao Chen proved that his choice back then was not wrong. This world had always been one where the strong preyed on the weak and the weak were eliminated. The strong were the only ones who had the right to set the rules of this world. Although the child was young, as his son, perhaps it was not a bad thing for him to come into contact with this side of things early on. Just like Xiao Chen, even though his childhood was not accompanied by pain and suffering like other children, reality had proven that he had already become a strong person. Yu fired again. Bang! Bang! 2 shots landed on one of Mu Lianjue's legs. Blood splattered and shattered. Mu Lianjue, however, was in so much pain that he was almost numb. He did not even have the strength to cry out in pain. His body convulsed and he groaned a few times. He almost blacked out and fainted. Yu Yu's pair of clear and bright eyes were now dyed red with hatred. When he thought of the suffering this man had caused his mommy and Xiaoyi Chen, he could not wait to crush him. He walked over, aimed at Mu Lianjue's waist, and fired another shot. This time, blood splattered on his face. A trace of heat was on his cheeks, but he did not seem to feel it. His handsome eyes narrowed as he coldly pursed his lips. Mu Lianjue had been shot several times. As he continued to bleed, his body temperature became colder and colder. Right now, he was hoping that Yu Yu would give him a quick and painless death. However, Yu Yu clearly did not want to give him a quick death with one shot. Instead, he deliberately inflicted the greatest pain on him. Thus, he mercilessly shot at the non-fatal parts of his body. He looked more like he was venting the resentment in his heart. Yu Yu lowered his gaze with a murderous look. Those bullets landed squarely on Mu Lianjue's body. It was so painful that his entire body was almost numb. His mind buzzed and he kept losing blood. On one hand, his body felt cold because of the loss of body temperature. On the other hand, his wounds were scalded by the many bullets, and the burning pain was transmitted. Ice and fire. Bang! 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 Yu Yu fired another 8 shots consecutively, but each bullet perfectly avoided the man's vitals. Mu Lianjue endured the pain, feeling as though he was better off dead than alive. This was the first time he had seen such a terrifying child. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with hatred. He was shot many times, but none of the bullets were fatal. For a while, he was struggling at death's door, which made him wish he was dead. You. Mu Lianjue opened his mouth in a pleading tone. You. Instead of being tormented by him like this, he might as well die a quick death. Fourth granduncle, I haven't had my fill yet. How can I let you die like this? Yu Yu's tone was languid and nonchalant. After saying that, he lifted his leg and stomped on the wound on his abdomen. Blood gushed out from the wound the moment he stomped on it. Ugh! Chapter 1384. Ugh! Mu Lianjue groaned in pain. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He rolled on the ground for a while and let out a heart-wrenching shrill cry of pain. After being trampled on by Chun Shi, he was already on the verge of death. However, this stomp of Chun Shi's foot caused him to simply suffer a fate worse than death. The back of his head fiercely knocked against the ground, and his desire to seek death had never been stronger. He had never thought that there would be a day when living would be more painful than dying. Yu Yu shot his hand that was covering his wound. This is for my brother. Although Mu Chen's injuries were not caused by him, it was still his doing. Bang! I'm returning it to you on behalf of my mommy. His mommy had fallen into his hands, been humiliated, and tortured. How could a bullet be enough to pay off all the pain she had suffered at his hands? Yu Yu narrowed his eyes, which were sharp and piercing. Bang! Yu Yu's eyes widened after he finished firing the gun, and he coldly enunciated each word. This is for my daddy. Mu Lianjue coughed out a mouthful of blood as his whole body convulsed violently. Mu Yaja was stunned at first. Then he felt warmth in his heart. His son was taking revenge for him. While Mu Yaja felt warmth in his heart, he was also touched by Yu Yu's warm heart, which was hidden under his cold exterior. All along, Yu Yu had been Yun Shishir's little warm man and little god. However, he was so arrogant. For a long time, even though he was the little god of warmth, he only cared about Yun Shishir alone and silently protected his mommy. Now, Mu Yaja had entered his heart. All along, Yu Yu had only acknowledged one family member in his heart, and that was Yun Shishir. Other than that, be it Li Qin, Yun Na, or even Yun Yeqing, who had always treated Yun Shishir as his own, were just passers-by. In his heart, his mommy was number one. Mommy was the most important and special person in his heart. There was no one else like her. For as long as he could remember, he and his mommy had depended on each other. She was his lifeblood. Perhaps, this unique feeling of the little lad was hard to understand in the eyes of outsiders. However, for the past 7 years, Yun Shishir held a special place in his heart not only because blood was thicker than water, but also because they had relied on each other for so many years. However, as his biological father, Wuxia, almost like a god, had descended from the heavens and appeared before him without any warning. Without any warning, he went from being a child of a single-parent family to having a father. However, he rejected this daddy. He resisted and kept him at a distance of 1,000 miles away. At first, he was unwilling to admit that he had a father. So what if she was his biological child? Mommy was the only one he loved. However, as they got along, the father and son's feelings gradually merged. Wuxia appreciated this son of his, and Yu gradually accepted him, acknowledged him, until now he had acknowledged him. Those who bullied his mommy were unforgivable and deserved to die. Similarly, those who bullied his daddy were equally unforgivable. Chapter 1385. He was used to being cold and arrogant in front of Wuxia, but in reality he had long acknowledged him as his daddy. On the one hand, it was because he loved his daddy. On the other hand, it was because Wuxia was outstanding enough to gain his approval. Wuxia only felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly punched, instantly tearing a hole in it. A warm current gushed in, and even though he was standing in the cold wind, he did not feel cold at all. Instead, his whole body felt warm and cozy. Yu snorted. Looking at the man's miserable appearance, he smiled faintly. "Fourth granduncle, there are still 2 more shots. Can you hold on?" "There are still 2 more shots. They're for my grandparents whom I've never met before." With that, Yu fired 2 more shots at the man's chest. They were less than an inch away from his heart. Lianjue fainted completely and lost consciousness. The scene instantly became deathly silent. Besides the whistling of the cold wind, everyone was deathly silent. Mu Linfeng, in particular, was as stiff as a rock. He had long been stunned. Yu maintained his gun-wielding posture. His face paled for a moment before his vision regained its focus. However, when his gaze landed on the man lying limp on the ground and covered in blood, he realized with a start what he had just done. He had killed someone. He had shot and killed someone. For the first time in his life, his hands were stained with filthy blood. However, deep down, he knew that once stained with such filth, it would be difficult to wash it clean. Yu sucked in a deep breath of cold air. After a long time, he quietly lowered his arm. His wrist loosened, and the gun in his hand fell to the ground with a loud thud. Wuxia walked over and hugged him in his arms. He gently placed his large palm on the boy's cold face, only to see that the boy's face had turned ghastly pale. Just now, in the midst of extreme passion, he was completely unaware of the significance of what he had done. However, when he suddenly reacted from his hatred, he actually felt a bone-chilling coldness. "Baby, what's wrong?" Wuxia hugged him with some heartache, his slender fingers tenderly caressing the side of his face. He should have stopped him just now. She had to stop him when he lost his mind. However, even he was shocked by Yu's cold expression and could not recover from his shock. Yu turned around and said calmly, "I killed someone." His tone was calm, but it was more like he was stating an ordinary matter. Vermilion Bird walked to the man's side and squatted down to check his breathing. Her fingertips came in contact with a faint breath. It was very weak, but there was still a trace of breathing. Vermilion Bird raised his eyes and said, "Still alive? Kill him." Yun Tianyu expressionlessly replied, "Since he wants to die, let's give him a quick death." Zhu Kei's face darkened for a moment, but she silently said in her heart, "President Yun, what are you saying? You've already tortured him to such a miserable state, and now you want to give him a quick death." She suddenly felt that the man was very pitiful. She looked at him sympathetically and thought to herself, "You can offend anyone, but you chose to offend Hurricane Group's #1 Demon King. Die early and reincarnate early." Yu suddenly asked, "Do you pity him?" She quickly shook her head. "Kill him." Chapter 1386. Wuxia nodded. "Leave his life to me." With that, he handed Yu to Vermilion Bird and walked toward Lianjue. Lowering his head, he looked down at him condescendingly with a cold glint in his eyes. Do I hate him? Do I hate him? He asked in his heart. There was no doubt that he hated him to the core. He was the one who had poisoned his father. Back then, his father had a car accident. However, the autopsy report concluded that his father, who had never touched drugs before, was actually a drug addict. He had smoked marijuana and even injected a large amount of heroin when he was alive. Hence, when he drove, he had hallucinations and caused a tragic accident. He had never believed that his father would do drugs. In his mind, Mu Lianqing had always been self-disciplined and would never touch such things. However, even if he had his suspicions, it was an undeniable fact. He did not expect that all of this was caused by Mu Lianjue. If it were not for him, his father would not have died. His mother, on the other hand, had taken chronic poison for many years. She had passed away at a very young age due to illness. Both of his family members had been killed by him. This was Mu Lianjue, a heartless and unscrupulous person who would do anything to fight for power. The series of events that followed were all his doing. Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes. He had always been puzzled. Mu Lianjue and his father were biological brothers. Even if they did not have the same mother, they were still related by blood. Why would he do this? Why would he do such a cruel thing? This was the answer he had always wanted. Now, however, he realized that the so-called answer was no longer important. So what if he got the answer? His father and mother would not come back to life either. The dead were gone. It was time for him to let go of the grudges of the previous generation. However, he should be the one to decide Mu Lianjue's life. At the thought of this, Mu Yaja clenched his jaw and pursed his thin lips into a stiff line. Then, he abruptly grabbed Mu Lianjue's neck and tightened his grip, not holding back at all. Mu Lianjue abruptly woke up from his groggy state under such immense pressure. His pair of eagle-like eyes abruptly widened, but they were bloodshot and crimson as if they were filled with blood. You... The muscles on his face twitched. Because of the excessive suffocation, his entire face had swelled to the color of a pig's liver. His pair of eagle-like eyes were glaring angrily under the terrifying suffocation. He could only feel that under the overwhelming twisting force, his consciousness was becoming increasingly weak. Ugh, cough. Mu Lianjue's eyes popped out of their sockets. The blood in his body gushed to the top of his head, and even his eyeballs could not move. Mu Yaja did not say a word. He did not have the patience to waste any more words. He only wanted to settle all the grudges and grievances with his own hands at this moment. This man before him, he hated him to the core. Mu Yaja stared fixedly at him. Suddenly, scenes flashed before his eyes like a carousel lantern. In his memory, the one that left the deepest impression on him was Mu Lianqing's extremely strong arms. When he returned home from work, he would always lift him up and kiss his forehead. Chapter 1387. Baby, you're back. He loved his mother's long, black hair the most. When she was seriously ill, he would take good care of her by her bedside and carefully wash her hair. Every time those black strands of hair flowed through his fingers, he would look at his mother's pale face in the mirror, and his heart would uncontrollably surge with sorrow. However, all of this once beautiful life, was suddenly shattered. It was all destroyed by this man. He was left alone. You deserve to die. Mu Yaja's voice was low and furious. Every word he uttered seemed to be squeezed out from the roots of his teeth, and they were filled with endless hatred. Mu Lianjue, you deserve to die. Mu Linfeng could not bear to watch this scene and turned away. Yu, who was in Vermilion Bird's arms, looked at Mu Yaja's stiff back view and felt a sharp pain in his heart. His heart ached for his daddy. He did not know what kind of childhood his daddy had. At least it was not a happy one. Unlike him, no matter how sick and weak he was and how much humiliation he suffered, he still had Yun Shirsher by his side to protect him and accompany him gently. His daddy was different. He had lost both his parents when he was young. In such a big family, where power intertwined, he must have had to tread carefully along the way. Under Mu Yaja's strong grip, Mu Lianjue's throat was broken. His eyes rolled back as he breathed his last. Mu Lianjue was dead. Similarly, the family feud that spanned 2 generations had ended. Wuxia stood up and stood in the strong wind with a cold and lonely aura. At that moment, the cold wind suddenly became bitterly cold. It raged wildly as if it was clamoring fiercely. "Daddy!" Yu looked at Wuxia and suddenly called out softly. Wuxia turned around, his ink-black hair fluttering in the wind. His eyes were bloodshot, but the moment he turned back to look at Yu, they slowly faded away as if they were silk being peeled from a cocoon and returned to their original state. "Daddy, hug!" Yu smiled gently and opened his arms. Wuxia walked over and hugged him in his arms. Yu hugged his shoulders softly and looked up with a warm smile on her face. "Daddy, you have me in the future. You're not alone." Wuxia's heart skipped a beat. His eyes warmed as he hugged her even tighter. "I don't only have you. Yes, you still have Mommy." Wuxia scratched the bridge of his nose. "I still have Xiaoyichen." Yu smiled. "Xiaoyichen once asked me if it was okay for the 4 of us to be together forever." While Wuxia was still in a daze, Yu laughed and said, "In the past, I was still hesitant. One is so stupid, and the other wants to steal Mommy from me. Now I've made up my mind." After a pause, Yu suddenly became serious and said seriously, "Daddy, let's be together forever. You, Mommy, Xiaoyichen, and I. The 4 of us will be together forever. Is that okay?" He asked with a serious expression, but his tone was unprecedentedly serious. Wuxia was stunned for a long time. He was so surprised that he couldn't react for a moment. This was probably the first time Yu had confessed to him. In the past, this little guy was always so arrogant and cold in front of him. He was never close to him, and even if he cared, he never said anything. He was very awkward. Chapter 1388. To him, this was the biggest surprise. He had never thought that there would be a day when he would hear such warm words from his little mouth, which had always been filled with poisonous thorns. For a moment, Wuxia couldn't believe it. It was as if he was in a dream. Hence, he didn't snap out of it immediately. Yu saw that he was slow to react and was a little unhappy. He snorted arrogantly and said unhappily, "Why aren't you saying anything? Are you unwilling to do so?" Wuxia hurriedly said, "No, little idiot." Yu pouted and pouted. He was a little unhappy. "If you're unwilling, you don't have to force yourself. Don't think that I approve of you. If you weren't the man that Mommy liked, I wouldn't have bothered with you." His arrogant words reverted to Yu's usual noble and cold demeanor. Wuxia smiled and rubbed his forehead dotingly. Okay. This time, he would let him say whatever he wanted. "Do you think that I want to be with you?" Seeing that Wuxia still didn't say anything, Yu was even more unhappy. He looked at him with disdain. "If I wasn't worried that you wouldn't dote on Mommy enough and bully her, I just want to be with Mommy forever. Don't misunderstand." Wuxia continued to smile dotingly and echoed his words. Okay. His agreement made Yu even more unhappy. Why didn't he say anything? Yu was unhappy. "Hey, you." Wuxia's eyes suddenly drooped as he gently kissed the boy's forehead. Following that, he placed another warm kiss on the boy's eyelashes. His indulgence was self-evident. Yu was stunned. Then, he heard Wuxia's gentle voice above his head. "Yu, let Daddy dote on you forever. Okay?" Yu was stunned. He did not expect Wuxia to say something so heart-wrenching. "We've missed each other for 6 years. During these 6 years, I had no idea that I had such a smart and adorable son other than Xiaoyichen." As Wuxia spoke, his eyes fell on Yu's palm-sized face. He couldn't hide the heartache in his eyes. "Forgive me for missing you for so long. I made you and Mommy wait for so long. I made you miss out on 6 years of fatherly love. I'm sorry. Forgive Daddy." This was probably the most emotional thing Wuxia had ever said. If Yun Shirshir and Xiaoyichen were here, they would definitely feel indignant. Especially Yun Shirshir. Even in front of her, Wuxia had never said such touching words of love. Yu blushed when he heard this. However, the shyness in his eyes quickly disappeared. He looked up and couldn't help but chide his son. What's the use of saying sorry? Humph. Her haughty and awkward behavior really made people feel cold. Yu pursed his pink lips slightly. However, his heart was filled with warmth. It was as if a spring breeze had brushed past and a warm current was flowing through him. Little fool, maybe you're secretly laughing in your heart. Mu Yaja couldn't help but expose him. A look of panic flashed across Yu's face. Then he snorted and said, "When did I?" Humph. There was even more disdain in his eyes. The father and son looked at each other and suddenly smiled. Yu finally relented. "Okay, I'm a great person and won't hold a grudge against you. I'll be merciful and forgive you." Mu Yaja kissed him. The heartwarming scene diluted the cold and solemn atmosphere around them. Li Hanlin stood behind them and rubbed his forehead helplessly. Chapter 1389. Mu Linfeng was a little moved by this scene, but he could not bear to disturb this heartwarming scene. He quietly got into the car and left. After Mu Lianjue's death, the funeral was naturally handled by him. Of course, he ordered everyone to keep their mouths shut about what had happened tonight. His subordinates carried the body back and ordered the hospital to write a death report. After that, arrangements were made according to the circumstances of the death. To Mu Yaja and Yu, all of this seemed to have never happened. It was just the death of an insignificant character. However, when Mu Linfeng brought the news of Mu Lianjue's death back to the family, it caused quite a stir. Mu Shumin, in particular, found it hard to accept the news of Mu Lianjue's sudden death. Mu Shumin naturally did not believe that Mu Lianjue had passed away due to illness. Although Mu Lianjue's health was not good, he was still strong enough. It was hard to link it to his death. Moreover, it was too sudden. There was no relief at all. Moreover, with the things that had happened in the Mu family these past few days, it was hard for them not to associate Mu Lianjue's death with Mu Yaja. However, even though Mu Shumin repeatedly asked about the cause of Mu Lianjue's death, Mu Linfeng only brushed it over and did not mention what had happened tonight. In fact, he was even a little impatient. Since he was unwilling to say anything, Mu Shumin naturally did not dare to ask. If Mu Shumin did not dare to ask, the rest were even less qualified to mention it. In just a few days, the Mu family was at peace. To the public, it was only announced that Mu Lianjue had passed away due to his worsening illness. A solemn funeral was held and he was buried in peace. Of course, this was all for later. On the way home from the south entrance of the expressway, Yu sat in the front passenger seat, unable to calm down. Mu Lianjue's death could be considered as a weight off his mind. Then he thought of Mu Wanru. So, the little boy turned his head and asked, "Daddy, I heard that Mu Wanru has been placed in the Mu Group's private hospital. I heard that her condition is not very optimistic." The corner of Mu Yaja's eyes twitched fiercely as he sighed with emotion. "You're really well informed." Of course. Yu sniffed proudly like a mischievous little elf. Her eyes were bright and sparkling. "I won't let anyone who offends my mommy off. Even if they escape to the ends of the earth, even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we will dig them out." Mu Yaja was speechless. "Baby, do you know what kind of boys girls are most afraid of these days?" What? Yu was perplexed, unable to comprehend what was going on. "Mama's boy," Mu Yaja said faintly. "You're the world's first mommy's boy that I've ever met." Haha. Yu was elated and revealed a rare hearty smile. "That's because before Daddy appeared, Mommy only had me. If I don't pamper Mommy a little, who will?" Mu Yaja was taken aback. He could actually detect a hint of bitterness in his calm voice as he recalled all those unbearable memories of the past. His heart sank. Even though Yu's tone was calm and nonchalant, the memories of the past 6 years were still vivid in his mind. He was probably feeling indignant for Yun Shirshir. In his heart, his mommy was an elegant princess. A woman like her should be doted on by everyone. Chapter 1390. Mommy had been living such a hard life all this while. She had tasted the bitterness of the world. He hoped that his mommy could be happier. Happier? When he thought of this, he said unwillingly, "Mommy is still very young. She's only 24 and has suffered a lot. I feel that it's so unfair. I can't accept it." At this point, he glanced at Wuxia and asked, "When do you plan to hold your wedding with mommy?" "I haven't thought about it yet," Wuxia said honestly. "You're not ready?" Yu seemed unhappy with this answer. "Not really." Wuxia paused. When they reached a traffic light junction, the car stopped. He turned his head and answered seriously, "I haven't thought about how to give her a perfect wedding." In the past, he only felt that weddings were an insignificant formality. Perhaps it was because he had never thought that there would be such a person who would make him seriously consider how to create a romantic and perfect wedding. However, now, he also had some romantic fantasies about his marriage with Yun Shishir. When it came to romance, men always seemed to lax themselves compared to women. Actually, that was not the case. Did men not understand romance? That was not the case. A man did not understand romance only because that person did not appear. When Yu heard this, he felt gratified but also jealous. He could not bear to part with her. "I can't bear to let mommy marry you." He revealed the conflict in his heart honestly. Wuxia frowned. This kid. His mommy was marrying him. Why did this little kid give off an inexplicable feeling of melancholy? And this kind of melancholy was like a father who had experienced the vicissitudes of life and was about to marry off his beloved daughter. Li Hanlin had once said that Yu and Yun Shishir were mother and son in some ways. However, when Yu hid that side of him behind Yun Shishir's back, Yu doted on his mommy more like a daughter. It was a sense of déjà vu between father and daughter. It was as if ethics had been reversed. Wuxia's lips twitched. Yes, that was the feeling. Yu was like a father who couldn't bear to see his daughter get married. Just as he was feeling awkward, he heard Yu's daddy mumble again. "I suddenly feel that it's so unfair." Unfair? Yes. I feel that I can't let you take advantage of me for nothing. My mommy is as beautiful as a flower, gentle and kind. The people who want to pursue my mommy could line up from my doorstep to Siberia. Why should I let you beat me to it? The more Yu spoke, the more indignant she became. She clenched her fists and snorted arrogantly. "You didn't even go through the process of courtship. No, I can't let you pass. Daddy, I can't let mommy marry you like this. It's too easy on you." Wuxia was stunned. "Why? Tell me you disappeared for 6 years for no reason. Now that you've reappeared, you didn't even go through the process of courtship. How can I let you marry mommy so easily?" However, Wuxia felt that the little kid's silent scheming was really interesting and adorable. Seeing that he had made the decision in all seriousness, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and ask, "Oh, there are conditions?" "Yes, of course." Yu said matter-of-factly, "You didn't even go through the process of courtship, love letters, dating, or courtship. That's not fair." Wuxia was stunned. Chapter 1391. "You actually went on a date with mommy behind my back?" Yu smelled a hint of adultery, and there was a dangerous glint in his eyes. It doesn't count. It's not formal enough. If you want to marry my mommy, you have to start from a formal courtship." Yu concluded. Wuxia kept quiet. "Courtship? Yes. Do you know how to court girls?" "No. Can you teach me?" Wuxia's expression was serious. What he said was true. He had never courted any girl before. Basically, the women around him couldn't wait to get close to him. He had never taken the initiative. "You don't even know how to court girls. So, how about you be daddy's strategist?" Wuxia asked humbly with a sincere expression. However, Yu retorted, "I can't even bear to let mommy marry you. How can I be your strategist?" "Dream on." Wuxia kept quiet again and glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. Yu did not back down and looked back at him from the corner of his eyes. The father and son faced each other in silence. Wuxia pursed his thin lips. He had learned his lesson. To put it bluntly, this fellow was unwilling to let his mommy marry him. Hence, he deliberately made things difficult for him. This was a test for him. If he could not bear to marry mommy, he should have just said so. The little fellow was so awkward because he could not bear to let mommy go but was too shy to express it. On the other side, Yu said lightly, "Daddy, mommy doesn't belong to you yet. If you don't hurry up, there will be so many people courting mommy. Humph. These words were obviously a threat to him. Wuxia smiled deeply, but his eyes were filled with gentleness. Back to Shanti Walk. In the time it took for him to park the car, Yu flew into the house and hurriedly ran into the bedroom. He carefully pushed open the door, tiptoed in, and silently made his way to the bedside. Yun Shirshir was sleeping soundly. She did not seem to realize what had happened tonight and was still immersed in a gentle dream. Yu felt relieved when he saw that she was sleeping soundly. When he went out tonight, he secretly wanted to settle things behind her back. Yu had always been like this. In a corner where Yun Shirshir could not see, in a small detail that she could not detect, he arranged everything for her. No matter how big the devil he would kill God and God would kill God. Whenever mommy's SSSS, he would be zzzzz. Even if he had to fight against the heavens, even if he had to be the enemy of the world, he would wholeheartedly protect her and ensure her safety. Yu squatted down and leaned over the bed, looking at her gently. When his gaze met Yun Shirshir's sleeping face, his gaze instantly softened and became as gentle as water. It was as if Yun Shirshir, who was sleeping on the bed, was the most beautiful treasure in the world in his eyes. It made him want to take pity on her. A strand of hair fell between her eyebrows and intertwined with her thick eyelashes. He gently reached out and brushed the strand of hair away, tucking it behind her ear. She was extremely sensitive. Even if it was from Yu's tender fingertips, that slight touch was enough to make her, who was in her dreams, let out a muffled moan. It was as if she was talking in her sleep. Afraid that he would disturb her, Yu immediately withdrew his hand and blinked innocently. He was afraid that he would wake her up. Yun Shirshir's delicate lips opened and closed, letting out a soft murmur before returning to being docile and quiet. She did not wake up. Chapter 1392. He poked Yun Shirshir's soft cheeks with his fingertips and muttered to himself, "Mommy, I can't bear to marry you off. This is a very selfish way of thinking, isn't it?" His gaze fell on Yun Shirshir's sleeping face. Suddenly, he was a little distracted. Indeed, he couldn't bear to part with her. How should he put it? It was a very strange feeling. It was as if the person he had always cared for and protected with all his might would no longer belong to him alone one day. From a certain perspective, wasn't it a kind of loss as well? Or perhaps, even though he and his mommy had depended on each other for 6 years and had developed an inseparable bond, marrying off his mommy would always make him feel a little lonely. This kind of loneliness was not something that Wuxia and Shaoichen could give him. Just as Li Hanlin had said, from a certain perspective, his mentality was indeed similar to that of a father who couldn't bear to marry off his daughter. Yu sighed and looked down. "Mommy, don't worry. If you're happy, that's my happiness. If you're not happy, wouldn't Yu's hard work be meaningless?" When he thought of this, he leaned over and gently planted a kiss between Yun Shirshir's eyebrows. "My dear mommy, good night." After saying that, he carefully tucked the bedding in for her and left silently. When Wuxia finished parking his car and walked in, Yu had already washed up and changed into her pajamas. Standing at the door, he rubbed his eyes. "Daddy, good night." Wuxia smiled. "Good night, baby." Yu smiled and waved her hand. Just as she was about to enter the room, she suddenly thought of something. She turned around and walked in front of Wuxia. Then, she hooked her finger at him mysteriously. Wuxia saw that Yu Yuan seemed to have something to say. He bent down slightly and looked at Yu Yuan at eye level. Yu suddenly leaned over and kissed his forehead gently with her pink lips. Gee, he took a bite. It was fragrant. Wuxia was stunned. He never thought that the little fellow would take the initiative to kiss him. A goodnight kiss? He smiled gently, and his heart felt warm again. Tonight, this little fellow had warmed his heart to the point of bursting with joy. Yu clasped her hands behind her back and lowered her head shyly after the kiss. She seemed very awkward and bashful. Seeing Wuxia's stunned and surprised expression, he explained, "Good-night kiss, stupid daddy." "Yes." Wuxia was still a little slow on the uptake. The surprise came too suddenly. The little fellow actually took the initiative to say goodnight to him. In the past, he wouldn't have dared to think about it. Seeing his indifferent reaction, Yu could not help but be annoyed by his slowness and clumsiness. Was that all he could do? Yu could not help but feel hurt. He had taken the initiative to give him a goodnight kiss. In the end, his stupid daddy was like a block of wood. Did he not know how to give him a goodnight kiss? Thinking of this, he muttered angrily, "Stupid daddy." Then he turned around and was about to enter the room. However, just as he turned around, Wuxia suddenly picked him up from behind and held him in his arms. "Good boy, baby." Wuxia's slender fingers pinched his chin. His thin lips brushed past his ears and landed on his pink cheeks. Mwah! It was a light kiss, a reply to his goodnight kiss. Yu was slightly distracted. Then her face turned red and she pursed her lips. She was clearly a little shy. All right. Chapter 1393. Wuxia carried him back to the room and turned on the wall lamp. As soon as the warm wall lamp was turned on, Wuxia and Yu were stunned when they saw the scene on the bed. Then both of them frowned at the same time. She saw little Ichen sleeping soundly on the bed, but his sleeping posture was as restless as usual. At this moment, he was like an octopus with his small arms and legs sprawled out, occupying more than half of the bed domineeringly. He was even snorting soundly at this moment. "Daddy, look," Yu complained pitifully. "This guy is restless every night. I don't want to sleep in the same bed as him. Every morning, I'm almost squeezed off the bed by him." Wuxia was speechless. "Daddy, does he usually sleep like this in the Mu family?" Yu asked. "Yes. His sleeping posture is terrible," Yu criticized mercilessly. Wuxia sighed heavily. "Yes. This probably had something to do with his sleeping habits." Xiao Chen's bed in the Mu family's bedroom was very big. It was 3 meters wide and 4 meters long. Therefore, the little guy had developed the habit of sleeping in an unrestrained manner since he was young. After all, the bed was very big and spacious. Therefore, he had always been used to acting wildly on such a big bed. Therefore, he could not adjust to the fact that he had changed to a 2-meter bed. However, Yu was different. When he was younger, he and Yun Shishir slept on the same bed. Yun Shishir slept very quietly. Basically, she would sleep in the same position when she woke up. If she was not disturbed, she would not change her position for the entire night. When Yu was older, he could not afford to change to a bigger bed. He slept on a 1.5-meter bed. Therefore, he slept very peacefully. After meeting Xiao Chen, Yu finally realized that some people could behave wildly in their sleep. Sometimes, Yu really wondered what Xiao Chen was dreaming about. Why did he fall asleep and move so much? There were several times when he was woken up by this fellow. He really wanted to wake him up, pinch his face, and ruthlessly ravage him. Wuxia said sympathetically, "Baby, it's been hard on you." Yu was speechless. After a moment of silence, he suggested, "I want to change to a bunk bed." He slept on one bed while Xiao Chen slept on the other. Wuxia agreed. "I'll send someone to buy one tomorrow." "No need," Yu said. "I'll book one for myself tomorrow." Under Leji Holdings, there was a smart children's bed. It had 2 bunk beds and an intelligent sleep system. It was very popular. He was the one who researched and designed it. Just as well, he could book one and experience the results of his own design. Wuxia was speechless. This son of his was really not an ordinary genius. At his age, he did not even know how to draw. His son could already sleep in the smart children's bed that he designed. The pupil had surpassed the master. However, he felt very proud of it. His 2 sons were so outstanding. "Go to sleep." Wuxia carried him to the bed and covered him with a blanket. Yu glanced at Xiao Chen, who had been chased to the side by Wuxia. His disdainful expression softened slightly. "Daddy, you have to sleep early too," he said softly. Wuxia smiled and walked to Xiao Chen's side. He also planted a goodnight kiss between his brows. When he left the room, he turned off the lights and closed the door. He went to the bathroom to wash up before returning to the bedroom. Chapter 1394. At this moment, it was already late into the night. It was pitch black outside the window. There were no stars in the sky, only the bright moon was gradually covered by dark clouds. There was a light lamp at the head of the bed. He walked over and looked at the person on the bed. She was sleeping soundly. There were traces of someone gently twisting the blankets. Thinking about it, Yu must have come in just now and twisted the blankets for her. This considerate little guy always hid his gentleness in the bottom of his heart. If this blissful little woman knew that her son had silently done so much for her, she would definitely be touched. However, Yu had never let her know. He had always hidden this gentleness behind her back, silently protecting her in a place where she could not detect it. Wuxia got onto the bed. He leaned forward slightly and pulled her into his arms. His movements were extremely gentle and careful, afraid that he would disturb her. He placed her head on his arm and stroked her cheek with his fingers. Wuxia lowered his gaze and looked at her face. At this moment, the person in his arms was sleeping quietly. Her gentle and quiet sleeping face was as warm and peaceful as the years in the world. When she was quiet, the beauty of her face became even more flamboyant. However, this flamboyance didn't reveal its sharpness. It wasn't dazzling, but it was docile and quiet. Occasionally, one would catch a glimpse of her beauty and realize that there was a shocking charm hidden in her beauty. In that instant, even his heartbeat uncontrollably calmed down. He was afraid that if his heartbeat became stronger, it would disturb her in her sleep. Hugging her in his arms, he felt a sudden surge of emotion in his heart. That was, he wanted to present the most beautiful treasure in the world to her and give it to her. However, on the other hand, he felt conflicted. Wasn't the most beautiful treasure in the world sleeping quietly in front of him right now? Perhaps, in his eyes, there was no treasure in the world more precious than this. Yu's words suddenly rang in his ears. In my eyes, Mommy is the most beautiful treasure in the world. Mommy is the most beautiful gift given to me by God. Even if I have to become the enemy of the world, I will protect her to the fullest. If you love her, please treat her well, lest she wander about in misery, lest she have no one to rely on. All right, Wuxia could not help but ask. I will definitely take care of you properly. He nodded slightly and whispered gently into her ear. Sure. I'll pursue you. Okay? His question was gentle and quiet. However, in her sleep, she would not respond to him no matter what. Wuxia's lips curled into a smile as he turned off the wall lamp and pulled her into his embrace. Holding her in his arms, he fell asleep in a soft dream. When Yunshirsher woke up in the morning, it was already dawn outside the window. However, due to the heavy curtains, the room was dimly lit. She opened her eyes and saw Wuxia's peaceful sleeping face. Her heart froze, but at the same time, she felt exceptionally warm. She didn't know when he came back, nor did she know when he fell asleep. He must have gone to bed very late. He hugged her shoulders, and his palm quietly rested on her waist. His thick weight made it easy for her to feel the warmth from his palm. The happiest thing in life was to wake up with you. In the morning, the first thing she saw when she opened her eyes was him. How wonderful! Chapter 1395. Yunshirsher woke up, but she did not get up. She just quietly nestled in his arms and looked at him. She was surprised to find that this man was especially good-looking when he was asleep. When he was awake, he was the pride of the heavens and the elite of the empire. He shone brightly, as if he was the reincarnation of the emperor. His eyes were handsome and his body was sharp. His exquisite features were arrogant and sharp. It was as if all the darkness had nowhere to hide when he opened his eyes. However, when he was asleep, his sharpness was restrained. He was quiet and deep. His eyes were gentle and his handsome features were different from his usual radiance. They were extremely gentle. Yunshirsher's gaze fell on his sexy thin lips. His lips were very thin, and his lips were arrogant and even a little sharp. She could not help but reach out and touch his lips with her fingertips. Her fingertips traced the line of his lips and carefully traced the shape of his lips. It was said that people with thin lips were fickle in love. Yunshirsher pursed her lips slightly. She felt that this was simply a fallacy. However, in her heart, this man was extremely affectionate, even loyal. Yun Shirshir looked up and her gaze fell on his eyes again. When he was asleep and his eyelids were closed, she could see his deep eyeliner and his thick and long eyelashes. His eyelashes were ridiculously long and his eyelashes were very deep. She finally understood who Yu had inherited his beautiful eyelashes from. Usually, when he opened his eyes, he gave people the feeling that his gaze was very deep, extremely evil and breathtaking. It turned out that he had a pair of deep eyeliner like Yu and Xiaoyi Chen, especially his eyelashes that were like the feathers of a black phoenix. They were so beautiful that even gods and men would be envious of them, so much so that she was a little jealous. Why did the heavens dote on him so much and mold him to be so perfect? However, on second thought, it was all thanks to the heavens that they loved him so much. Yu and Xiaoyi Chen had inherited his excellent genes. When she thought of this, she instantly felt satisfied. Yun Shirshir secretly reached out and fiddled with his eyelashes. From time to time, she would pinch them between her fingers and gently stroke them. It's very thick. She was like a naughty kitten, lazily nestled in his arms, lazily playing with his eyelashes. She seemed to be enjoying herself. In his sleep, Mu Yaja's brows were slightly furrowed, as if he was annoyed. He subconsciously reached out and swatted her little hand away. She was unwilling to give up. When he was deep in sleep, she reached out her hand and played with his eyelashes. Her fingers then moved to his eyebrows and carefully rubbed them. Her fingertips then fell between his eyebrows, trying to smooth out the wrinkles between his eyebrows. Why did the men here look so serious even in their sleep? Why did they always frown? She rubbed it carefully, trying to smooth out his furrowed brows. All of a sudden, Muyaja opened his eyes. He raised his eyelids and his deep pupils shone with the light of awakening. She was instantly embarrassed. "You're awake." Could it be that he was woken up by her disturbance? She furrowed her brows in annoyance and bit her lip. Her movements were very gentle. Little did she know that this man had always been a light sleeper. Even the slightest movement would wake him up easily. The moment Muyaja opened his eyes, the sharpness in his eyes disappeared. However, when his vision cleared and reflected on her delicate face, the sharpness quietly faded away. Chapter 1396. After he brushed it away, she persevered and continued to play with it, as if she was never tired of it. She whispered, "You're awake? Did I wake you up? You should have come back very late last night. Did you sleep very late? What were you doing just now?" He asked in a deep voice. His voice was a little hoarse and deep because he had just woken up, and it was especially sexy. She could still hear it, and her heart instantly went numb. Feeling a little guilty, Yun Shirshir snorted and avoided the topic. "I'm not doing anything." Could she say that she was bored when she woke up, so she secretly played with his eyelashes? Or was she envious of his long eyelashes? They were so beautiful that she couldn't help but get addicted to playing with them? He would definitely laugh at her for being bored again. "What are you doing?" The man pursed his lips, obviously doubting her words. "I see that you're full of energy early in the morning." Yun Shirshir blushed and immediately defended herself. "I woke up. After reading the script yesterday, I went to bed very early. My biological clock woke me up naturally." So? Muyaja raised his good-looking brows. "So, she had to wake him up when she woke up?" Yun Shirshir glanced at him and couldn't help but explain. I woke up a long time ago. I was bored when I woke up, so I was counting your eyelashes when you were asleep." Counting his eyelashes? What kind of game was this? Muyaja furrowed his brows and asked, "Have you counted clearly?" No. How could she count clearly? It was like a brush. If she had such thick eyelashes like his, she would save the effort of brushing them. Little did she know that as soon as her voice fell, the man's tall body flipped over and covered her body in a dark mass. He supported himself with his arms by her side. With just a stretch of his hand, he gently lifted a strand of her hair that had fallen on the pillow. He sniffed at the tip of his nose and lowered his eyes. Obviously, he enjoyed this fragrance very much. Opening his eyes, his handsome eyes suddenly flashed with a touch of playfulness. "Then I'll give you another chance. The man smiled evilly, bowed his head, and leaned closer to her. Their noses touched, and their lips touched. His warm breath brushed against her face, incomparably intimate. A clear voice rang in her ears. "Count how many eyelashes I have." Yoon Shirshir blushed slightly, and then she unnaturally avoided his overly deep eyes. She muttered in a low voice, "I'm not counting anymore." "What is it?" Mu Yaja brushed her hair, but was puzzled. "You were counting happily just now." She felt powerless and said lazily, "There are too many. I can't count them all." "Your eyelashes are so long and dense that my eyes hurt from counting them." "All right." The man smiled and kissed the corner of her lips lazily. Sticking to her lips, his thin lips escaped from her lips. "Since you're so energetic and don't count your eyelashes, let's do something else." Yoon Shirshir was stunned. Soon, she could hear the hidden meaning in his words. His words were obviously referring to something else. A wisp of red flew to her ears, and like a fire spreading, it burned her cheeks. Soon, her entire face seemed to be smeared with rouge, revealing a charming shade of red. "Hey, you, stop fooling around." Her shyness, in his eyes, had a hint of wanting to reject him. Chapter 1397. Why you don't like it? The man raised his eyebrows arrogantly and whispered into her ear. Between his smile, there was a hint of cynicism. Coupled with that clear voice, it was damn charming. In his eyes, it was as if there were stars that had been cut up, sparkling and sparkling. Being stared at by him like this, Yoon Shirshir's face grew increasingly hot. Her originally jade-like face was dyed with a rosy blush, exuding a delicate, tender, and translucent glow. She was obviously a little shy. The man was openly acting like a rogue in front of her. She was so embarrassed that she wanted to crawl under the blanket. Mu Yaja curled his lips into a smile. Originally, he thought that this woman would have gotten used to it, but now it seemed that he had not taught her well enough. Thus, he pinched her waist with his large palm. The soft touch immediately made him groan in pleasure, but his heart felt extremely comfortable. He was very satisfied with this soft touch, so he planned to do some morning exercises that were beneficial to his body and mind in this beautiful morning. While he was thinking about this, his hands had already begun to move. He skillfully stripped off her underwear and bent down to cover her cherry lips. This kiss seemed to have been premeditated for a long time. Nestled in her embrace, that pink little mouth opened and closed as if it was a silent invitation, luring him in. His heart had been itching for a long time, so when he lowered his head to look at her, it was as if he had found a prey to aim at. He stared fixedly at those pink pouty lips and pressed down on her. However, many erotic images flashed past his mind. As a man, he always had many erotic fantasies towards the woman he loved. Mu Yaja was the same. His mind filled with erotic images, and his body wrapped in the blanket became even hotter. Even though they were separated, the changes in his body were obvious. When Yoon Shirshir felt the heat, her heart suddenly beat like thunder, and her face felt as if it was cooked. He peeled off her pajamas and pressed his lips against hers, delicately embellishing her lips. At first, he was extremely careful and his kisses were gentle. Slowly, as the temperature in the room rose and turned white, he was no longer restricted to this light kiss. Gradually, he became fierce and wild. He held the back of her head with one hand and deepened the kiss. He wished he could turn into a beast and swallow her whole. He was lying on top of her, his two strong and sturdy arms supporting her on both sides of her shoulders, controlling her in a narrow space. His strong and fit body pressed down on her, leaving almost no room for maneuver. The ferocious kiss almost made her unable to breathe. Yoon Shirshir couldn't keep up with his pace. Her mind was blank, and she felt like she was about to suffocate. Yoon Shirshir punched his shoulder in annoyance, but the man ignored her and only sealed her lips, sucking and licking. He actually kissed her until her lips were swollen. Sweet. It was extraordinarily sweet. Mu Yaja couldn't help but be infatuated with the overly sweet breath on her lips. He parted her lips and passionately invaded, engulfed, and lingered. Yun Shirshir was gradually melted by this fiery kiss, turning into warm and soft jade water. Unknowingly, the pajamas on his body were quickly removed, and the two of them were entangled together. He possessed her. Chapter 1398. For a moment, the room was filled with the charms of spring as the temperature rose rapidly. After a round of passionate lovemaking, he hugged her and immersed himself in her warmth as he savored the aftertaste of love. However, even after doing it a few times, he still did not know when to stop and teased her from time to time in an attempt to arouse her. However, she did not live up to his expectations and did not respond at all. She was also indifferent to his teasing. It was too tiring. At this moment, Yun Shirshir seemed to have been drained of all her energy as she lay limp in his arms, unable to move at all. Even lifting a finger was difficult. She laid lazily in his arms. It was not easy for her to accumulate enough energy after a night of recuperation. At this moment, under his torment, it all collapsed and she was exhausted again. Her eyelids were heavy. She lazily half-opened her eyes and looked out of the corner of her eye, only to see the man leaning against the head of the bed and looking down at her. His eyes were playful and mischievous, as if he was mocking her for not living up to his expectations. He pinched the bridge of her nose and said, "Your stamina is too weak." When Yun Shirshir heard this, she could not help but feel angry. Could she blame him for this? Her stamina was not bad. But did he not see how ruthless he was when he wanted her just now? The deep invasion almost made her whole body fall apart. She was a little disappointing, but wasn't it all for him? Did he think that everyone was as strong as him, as if they never knew how to be satisfied and tired? The anger in her eyes made him laugh. Wuxia pinched the tip of her delicate nose lovingly and teased, "Why, are you not convinced?" Yun Shirshir bitterly slapped his hand away and said in a muffled voice, "Don't mess around. I'm a little tired now." She looked down tiredly and felt that after the battle just now, her eyelids were starting to fight again. "I know you're tired. Otherwise, he would not have let her off so easily," he said in a deep voice. He did his utmost to suppress the dark desire in his eyes. Now he was doing his utmost to restrain it. At the same time, a playful look appeared in his eyes, making one's face redden even more. She couldn't help but feel a little defeated. She raised her eyes to look at the man in front of her. He was like an arrogant emperor, lazily and elegantly leaning against the headboard. His gaze fell on her face. There was teasing, mischievous, playful, but most of all, there was a mischievous smile. This smile was mixed with a bit of devilish charm, but it also seemed like he was harboring evil intentions, as if he was mocking her disappointing physical strength. Yun Shirshir was furious. The more she looked at him, the more indignant she felt. This man was too vile. The way he looked at her really made her feel ashamed. When he thought about how he had used those embarrassing postures to take advantage of her, and how she had sunk into this dark, turbulent wave of passion. When he thought about how she had sunk into it, and how she had let out some tender chuckles, she felt even more ashamed and buried her face deep into the pillow. No, it was too embarrassing. At this moment, she wanted nothing more than to ruthlessly bang her head against the wall or find a hole to bury her head in. She was like a shy little bunny in front of him. However, her shy actions in his eyes were adorable and extremely cute. He couldn't help but lower his head and gently peck her red cheeks. The scene just now seemed to be unfinished as his body changed again. He frowned and cursed in his heart. Chapter 1399. Yun Shirshir glanced at the man's tensed expression and her face turned even redder. She muttered, "What a horrible man." Then, she crawled under the blanket and wrapped herself up. Wuxia chuckled inwardly. This woman is deliberately avoiding me. Could it be that he had frightened her? Wuxia suppressed his desire. Even though he hadn't had enough fun, he was still in a good mood after the morning exercise that was good for his body and mind. At the same time, he still felt dissatisfied. This woman's physique was a little weak, especially when it came to her physical strength. It seemed like she had to exercise more. He hadn't had enough fun, But she was already tired. This made him a little unhappy. However, he was a man who knew when to stop. When necessary, he wouldn't act rashly and alert the enemy, so as not to scare this little woman. After all, some things had a long way to go. A person's life was so long. He and she had a lot of time to study this. Hence, he wasn't in a hurry. He got out of bed and walked to the bathroom. After taking a cold shower to calm himself down, he walked to the door. Just as he turned the doorknob, he felt a weight on the door. Just as he opened the door a crack, two little lads, who were leaning against the door and listening attentively, were caught off guard and rolled in. Yu was the first to roll in. She was caught off guard and fell face first onto the floor. She groaned softly. Ah! Xiao Chen was the first to scream. He lost his balance and fell onto Yu's body. Yu cried out in pain again. The two squishy little balls fell onto the floor like a human pyramid. Yun Shirshir was shocked by the sudden sound. She peeked out from under the blanket and saw this scene. Her face turned so red that it looked like blood was going to ooze out. Hence, she crawled back under the blanket without a sound. This time, she was too ashamed to crawl out of the blanket. Woo woo woo. Was there anything more embarrassing than this? Yun Shirshir wanted to cry but had no tears. At the same time, he was secretly annoyed. But at the same time, he was worried about when these two little fellows had been hiding outside, and whether they had heard anything. The two little fellows were still so young. They wouldn't learn anything bad, right? Wuxia also seemed to have not expected this. He was stunned in place, and his handsome face darkened. A storm was coming. He had never thought that these two fellows would actually be eavesdropping outside the door, and even let him catch them red-handed. What happened? He questioned in a deep voice, but there was a trace of unhappiness in his words. Xiao Chen's ears perked up. As soon as he heard Wuxia's unfriendly tone, his little face paled. He knew that he had done something stupid. It's over. He seemed to have made Daddy unhappy. Xiao Chen awkwardly got up from Yu's body and stood up helplessly. He lowered his head and clasped his hands together nervously, not daring to look up at him. Daddy! He called out timidly and weakly. His voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzzing. It was obvious that he knew that he had done something wrong and was extremely ashamed. Wuxia's gaze was cold and intimidating, and his face was filled with anger. What are you doing? Xiao Chen could not answer. He nervously tugged at the corner of his shirt, looking like a timid little deer. Chapter 1400. Xiao Chen didn't know how to answer, so he glanced at the ground for help. In the end, he saw Yu lying on the ground motionlessly, pretending to be a corpse. Xiao Chen was speechless. Yu's behavior was a classic example of betraying a teammate. At this moment, the little guy kept telling himself that he was just passing by and didn't know anything. He was innocent. It was definitely not the right time to stand up and laugh it off. Since he was unfortunately discovered, Yu had his own tricks up his sleeve and would be able to escape this ordeal. Wuxia glanced at the corpse on the ground and his lips twitched. Then, he stretched out the tip of his foot and gently kicked his round little butt. Duong, he said. Get up. Yu remained motionless, lying face down on the ground and ignoring him. No reaction. No reaction at all. Wuxia raised a brow as his heart skipped a beat. He was suddenly a little worried. He remembered that Yu was the first to rush in and fell face down. Xiao Chen, who followed closely behind, fell on top of him and pressed him down heavily. He didn't know if it hurt him or not. Wuxia squatted down and stretched out his hand to pinch his cheeks. Then, he picked up little Munchkin, who was lying limply on the ground, and turned him over. At a glance, Wuxia saw that his forehead was red from kowtowing. It seemed to be bruised. Little Munchkin lifted his head and opened his eyes innocently. He blinked and his eyes were misty. He seemed to be in pain from the fall. When he blinked, a crystal-clear teardrop rolled down his cheek. Daddy, it hurts? Little Munchkin called out softly. Coupled with his innocent eyes, he looked at Xiao Chen with grievance and resentment. Wuxia immediately lost his temper. Xiao Chen, who was standing at the side, was so shocked that his mouth was wide open. Was this even possible? Feeling wronged, Yu pursed his lips and retorted, "Daddy, why did you suddenly open the door? I lost my balance and fell." Wuxia felt wronged and wronged. Who told you to eavesdrop outside the door? He couldn't help but say in displeasure. Sob, sob, sob. Yu clutched her chest in agony, as if she had been wronged. She made sure to portray the word pain in her heart. "Daddy, how dare you accuse me? Eavesdropping? How could you do something so despicable?" "Humph." Yu is angry. Wuxia was rendered speechless by his words. "Darling's heart is so cold." Wuxia was speechless. At the side, little Ichen's eyes widened as he sucked in a breath of cold air. "If you weren't eavesdropping, then why were you standing by the door?" Wuxia asked and looked at little Munchkin's tearful face suspiciously. Yu and Xiaoichen looked at each other and said confidently, "We were just passing by." Wuxia's lips twitched even more. He narrowed his eyes and was obviously skeptical. "Passing by?" "Yes, passing by," Yu said seriously. Wuxia didn't believe her at all. "Little liar. Really, really?" Yu suddenly wiped her tears and smiled obediently like a polite and humble gentleman. "Actually, I just finished making breakfast and wanted to come over and greet Daddy and Mommy. I also wanted to ask when Daddy and Mommy are having breakfast." Chapter 1401. Xiaoichen was speechless. Wuxia was speechless. Yun Shirshir was speechless as well. Yu tilted her head and smiled like an angel. She was pure, pure and harmless. "Good morning, Father. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. Would you like to have breakfast?" Xiaoichen's shoulders trembled. He thought to himself, "There are so many smiles in the world, but Yu is the only one who makes me feel that her smile is scarier than her poker face. It's more hair-raising." He felt that she was very two-faced. "Ahem, what's for breakfast?" Wuxia asked quietly. Yu's lips curled up and she smiled even more beautifully. "Bread, milk, poached eggs and ham." Wuxia was stunned. Then he said, "I like poached eggs." Yu kept calling him father, and he felt a little smug. In an instant, he completely forgot about the 2 glutinous rice balls eavesdropping outside the door. Xiaoichen was dumbfounded. He and Yu were indeed not on the same level. Even someone as smart as Daddy was completely under Yu's control. With a bright smile on his face, he asked, "Oh, right, my dear father, I've also fried deep-fried dough sticks. The outside is crispy and the inside is tender. The taste is superb. Do you want to try it?" Wuxia nodded in a daze. Then he carried Yu to the dining room. Xiaoichen was dumbfounded. He was petrified on the spot. Yun Shirshir hid under the blanket and couldn't help but snicker. "Ha ha ha ha." She was amused by Yu's smart and adorable look. She was amused. This little fellow was really a little shrewd. He had his daddy in the palm of his hand. With just a few words, she managed to coax Wuxia into having breakfast while avoiding the main point and dwelling on the trivial. Otherwise, this matter wouldn't be over. If Yu wasn't around, Xiaoichen might have been taught a lesson. Yu saved him from the abyss of suffering with just a few words. She wasn't simple. Xiaoichen learned and experienced what it meant to be scheming. "Mommy!" Xiaoichen stood at the door and called out to Yun Shirshir. Yun Shirshir emerged from the blanket with a blushing face, only to see the little boy leaning against the door with a blushing face. He shyly greeted, "Mommy, good morning." With that, he ran off. Shyly. The 2 little guys didn't intend to eavesdrop. They rushed over to invite Wuxia and Yun Shirshir to the dining room for breakfast. However, when they reached the door, Yu leaned against the door and pricked up his ears to eavesdrop on the sounds in the room. Xiaoichen also leaned forward. However, not long after, the door was suddenly opened. The 2 little lads failed miserably at such a simple task, and both of them fell in together. Yun Shirshir was amused. She covered her mouth and laughed until she collapsed on the bed. With 2 children at home, she felt that every inch of her life was bright and sunny. Xiaoichen and Yu were probably the best gifts that God had given her. In the dining room, Yu personally fed Wuxia a deep-fried dough stick. The latter took a bite. The golden skin was crispy and the inside was tender. It was indeed delicious. "You made this?" he asked in disbelief. Yu raised his eyebrows and was obviously very proud. "Yes, of course it was made by me." Wuxia wasn't stingy with his praise. "Your culinary skills are better than many chefs in star-rated restaurants." "Oh, humph. This is nothing. You haven't really experienced my culinary skills." Yu pretended to be reserved. Chapter 1402. After Yun Shirshir woke up, she received a call from her manager all of a sudden. "Shirshir, are you feeling better?" Yun Shirshir replied, "Yes, I'm feeling better." He heaved a sigh of relief, but his voice was filled with worry. "Your phone has been switched off recently. It wasn't easy for me to get through to you. I asked Mushi and she said that she couldn't reach you either. We were so worried." "I'm sorry. Something happened at home recently. That's why it's been inconvenient for me to switch on my phone." Yun Shirshir felt extremely guilty. The manager sighed helplessly and said, "It's okay. I thought something had happened to you, so I was worried." During this period, Yun Shirshir had disappeared from the face of the earth. She did not reply to any messages, and her phone was switched off when he called her. That was until Minyu sent someone to inform Jilin that Yun Shirshir was on leave. Only when the manager learned of this did he feel relieved. For the past 2 days, Yun Shirshir's phone had been switched on, so she replied to his messages. Qin Zhou, on the other hand, had been overseas for the past few days. The moment he returned, he turned on his phone and saw Yun Shirshir's reply in his inbox. He quickly called her back. After a pause, he asked in confusion, "What happened at home?" "It's a long story." Yun Shirshir did not know how to start. Qin Zhou, however, was extremely sensitive and comforted her. "It's okay if you don't want to talk about it. Artists need privacy and personal space too. I can understand that." "Yes, thank you, Qin Zhou." He asked, "Are you free recently? If you are, can you focus on your work now? While you were away, the studio accumulated a bunch of drafts waiting for you to destroy them." Yun Shirshir fell silent, as if she was facing a formidable enemy. Therefore, after breakfast, she hurried to the studio. The moment Qin Zhou saw her, he gave her a harsh scolding. Although his tone was gentle over the phone, he took the opportunity to give Yun Shirshir a good scolding. It was not because of anything else but because she had made him so worried, so he must teach her a lesson. Yun Shirshir's temper dissipated after being scolded. She sighed. "Qin Zhou, I'm sorry. Something happened at home recently." "That's not what I'm angry about." Qin Zhou snorted and said coldly, "I'm angry because you didn't tell me what happened and made me so worried. I thought you had been kidnapped." Yun Shirshir fell silent. "It's not that exaggerated." "Why not?" Qin Zhou rolled his eyes at her. "Shirshir, you have to understand that I treat you like family. If you need anything, please let me know." Halfway through, his tone suddenly softened. "Otherwise, you'll make me worry to death. I won't be able to eat or sleep in peace." Yun Shirshir's heart warmed as she sincerely said, "Thank you, Qin Zhou." "What are you thanking me for?" Qin Zhou rolled his eyes at her and changed the topic. "Let's not talk about this anymore. Have you finished reading the script?" "I did." Qin Zhou added, "We're going to start filming soon. You have to be careful and show off your acting skills." "Okay." Yun Shirshir kept it in mind. Naturally, Qin Zhou was not worried about her acting skills. Yun Shirshir's acting was not a problem for her to play the leading role in the production of Lethal Beauty. "Oh right. Do you know who the male lead of Lethal Beauty is?" "I don't know." Yun Shirshir shook her head blankly. Qin Zhou said, "The first young actor in ancient costumes and the hottest young actor in Huanyu right now, Hua Jin." Chapter 1403. Hua Jin. Yun Shirshir took half a second to react. "This name sounds familiar." Qin Zhou rolled his eyes helplessly. "Sister, can you be more careful and take more remedial classes? Hua Jin is in the limelight now. Okay. If he stands right in front of you and you don't recognize him, It will be very embarrassing. Yoon Shirshir was speechless. Qin Zhou glanced at her and added, "Besides, Huajin's background isn't as simple as it seems, so you have to be more careful. Stay away from him on set and don't get too close to him." Yoon Shirshir did not ask too much. She just followed whatever Qin Zhou said and did not ask why he said that this Huajin was not a simple person. She only thought that since Qin Zhou asked her to be more careful and avoid him, he must have his reasons. She just had to be obedient. Qin Zhou nodded in satisfaction. He especially liked this about Yoon Shirshir. No matter what he arranged or ordered her to do, she just did it obediently and rarely asked why. Even if she did, it was just a question out of curiosity. She never protested. She was a very obedient artist. She was very docile and did not have any sharp edges. In fact, she was probably the artist he had taken over the most. There were not many obedient artists in the entertainment industry. This showed that Yoon Shirshir had a lot of trust in him. He was very touched by this. Qin Zhou gave her some instructions. Hence, he asked her to wait for the makeup artist in the office. There was an exclusive interview with a fashion magazine in the afternoon. She was going to be interviewed and shoot a set of blockbusters. Yoon Shirshir nodded obediently. Qin Zhou went out. He had an appointment with a producer. There was a hit drama in the middle of filming and they were still short of a supporting role. Hence, he wanted to insert Yoon Shirshir into the cast so that she could be recognized. Although it was a supporting role, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. More importantly, this hit drama had a good reputation. The ratings for the second part of the drama were still shocking and it was firmly in the top 2 spots in the charts. One had to know that many popular dramas would lose their popularity by the time the second part was filmed. The main point was that this hit drama was being filmed and broadcast at the same time. After filming this episode, after 2 weeks of post-production, it would be broadcast on TV. Qin Zhou naturally had his reasons for making such arrangements. Previously, Yoon Shirshir had become popular mainly because the team of the Green Apple had promoted her on Weibo by publishing behind-the-scenes footage. However, now that the filming of The Green Apple was completed and it was in post-production, there would be a long period of silence. Therefore, Qin Zhou naturally had to use some means to get some exposure for her. It was a good choice to play a supporting role in this popular drama. Most importantly, this supporting character's persona was very good at eating. If Yoon Shirshir could get this opportunity and participate in it, it would definitely increase her exposure. Of course, he was determined to win this negotiation. Therefore, he gave Yoon Shirshir a few instructions and left in a hurry. Yoon Shirshir stayed in the company to memorize the script. There was an exclusive interview in the afternoon with Bazaar Fashion. Hence, Bazaar naturally arranged for their own makeup artist to do her makeup. At noon, the makeup artist arrived. Yoon Shirshir saw a fashionable face. "Hello, I'm Andy, the chief stylist of Bazaar Fashion." Andy smiled at her, revealing a bright but stiff smile. Chapter 1404. Yoon Shirshir furrowed her brows and unwillingly reached out her hand to shake hers. However, the moment she held Andy's outstretched hand, she felt her grip tighten. Her grip was so strong that it almost deformed her hand. Yoon Shirshir instinctively flung her hand away. Looking up, she frowned and looked slightly unhappy. She felt that the smile on Andy's face was extremely stiff and didn't seem very friendly. However, this was only their first meeting. Why did she feel that Andy's gaze was filled with hostility? "What's the matter?" Andy saw that her expression was slightly cold and couldn't help but laugh. "Yoon Shirshir, your attitude doesn't seem very friendly. You're shaking my hand too hard." Yoon Shirshir paused and pursed her lips. "You're hurting me." However, Andy laughed and looked her up and down. She said in a neutral tone, I didn't expect that a newcomer who just debuted would put on such airs. Were you acting like a big shot in front of me just now?" "Forget it, there's no need for that." "Acting like a big shot?" Yoon Shirshir was stunned for a moment and quickly reacted. This arrogant stylist in front of her was mocking her. It looked like this stylist wasn't very friendly to her. Even though she didn't understand why this person called Andy had such a hostile attitude towards her, she spoke in a neutral tone and was so sarcastic. They were meeting for the first time. but she acted as if they were enemies. Was she crazy? Did she have a grudge against her? Or had she offended this person in the past and she couldn't remember? Yoon Shirshir quickly brushed off her humiliation with a smile and coldly said, "Even if you want to act like a big shot, you still have to look at your capabilities. Your words are too much." Yoon Shirshir's words were very public and there wasn't anything wrong with her wording. However, when it came to Andy, she seemed to be deliberately twisting her words. She snorted coldly and said in a mocking tone, "Capital? You're a newcomer, what capital do you have to act like a big shot?" TSK. Yoon Shirshir, I've been in the industry for so long and you're the smallest celebrity I've ever worked with. If it weren't for the chief editor's orders, do you think I would be willing to serve you? As soon as she said this, Yoon Shirshir instantly understood. She was a very sensitive person, so she could tell from Andy's words that he was dissatisfied with her. Andy had humiliated her and treated her unkindly, not because she had a grudge against her, nor was it because she had offended her in the past. This Andy probably had a place in bizarre fashion. She claimed to be the chief stylist. Stylists with the title of chief must have a big background. Basically, only those who had participated in many fashion shows and received so many awards that their hands went numb were qualified to receive this title. Bizarre Fashion was one of the top international fashion magazines and had a place in the fashion industry. Most of the stylists under it had a strong background. Therefore, the stylist who was crowned with the title of chief was even more impressive. According to gossip, some chief stylists boasted of their high status and were very picky about the celebrities they served. Some stylists were even rejected by artists below the C-list level. This Andy looked very arrogant. The reason why she was so sarcastic to her was probably because she didn't want to be her stylist. After all, she had just debuted and acted in a movie and a few print advertisements. She wasn't very popular and didn't even have a high status. Chapter 1405. In other words, it was obvious that she despised Yoon Shirshir because of her low status. Yoon Shirshir's guess was correct. The reason why Andy was so hostile towards her was because she was unwilling to be the stylist of such a low-status artist. A newcomer who had just debuted could not even be considered a C-lister. Although she had been popular on Weibo for a while because of the hype created by the production team, she did not have a substantial reputation. After all, one's status was not determined by how popular one was on Weibo. It was determined by one's net worth. To put it bluntly, even if one was popular on Weibo, it would be useless if one was not popular in the industry. Yoon Shirshir's current salary was only 5 figures for a single episode. If she met a big-shot production team, she might have to fork out resources. When Andy received this assignment, she was disgusted. She did not want to take on such a low-status artist. After she received this assignment, the other people in the company mocked her behind her back for a long time. When they heard that she was going to take on a low-status artist, many people made cynical remarks about her. Originally, with Yoon Shirshir's status, there was no way she would be able to get an interview with Bazaar. This was mainly because Chin Zhou had added fuel to the fire behind the scenes. He had used the resources he had accumulated when he was managing Gu Xingze to secure this interview for Yoon Shirshir. The chief editor had arranged for Andy to take over. Andy was furious. She rejected it again and again, but the interview had already been decided. There was no way she could reject it. After all, she was the chief stylist of Bizarre Fashion. The artistes she had taken care of were either superstar actresses, or even famous carpet stars. Yoon Shirshir, on the other hand, was just a small fry who had popped out of nowhere. She had acted in a movie directed by Lin Fengtian. Now that the filming had finished and it was in post-production, the movie had not been released yet. No one knew how the box office would be after it was released and whether it would be a flop. However, these were not Andy's concerns. What she was concerned about was that Yoon Shirshir did not care about fashion at all. Dressing like this for an interview with Bazaar was obviously an insult to her. In the fashion industry, many stylists and makeup artists were proud and arrogant. This was especially true for a famous stylist like Andy. If it was in the past, when some celebrities wanted to accept a fashion interview, they would have 3 layers of support and then dress up meticulously for the interview. What about her? She was wearing a simple dress and a knitted sweater. Her black hair was draped over her shoulders. Her attire couldn't be any lower. Andy only felt disgusted. Therefore, she was bent on disgusting her. Yoon Shirshir was speechless. She quietly said, "I'm sorry. It's really hard for you to receive a small-time artist like me." His words were filled with bitterness, and there was even a hint of self-mockery. Andy was stunned. She thought that Yoon Shirshir would fly into a rage out of humiliation after being humiliated by her. In the end, she didn't seem to be angry, nor did she retort. Instead, she went along with her words and made a self-deprecating joke. Andy instantly lost his temper. What else could she say when the other party had already claimed to be a lowly celebrity? Thus, she asked coldly, "Have you hit your face?" "No." Yoon Shirshir said, "I just finished eating." Andy was speechless. Chapter 1406. Andy's expression was especially displeased as she sneered, "Hey, are you deliberately making things difficult for me? You know that you're going to be interviewed and filmed in a blockbuster, so why don't you prepare your foundation first? Are you waiting for me to do it? I just received the notice of the interview at the last minute, so I didn't know about it beforehand." Yoon Shirshir paused for a moment, then said calmly, "Whether it's you or me, an interview is a job, so there's no need to be so aggressive with me. If you want me to prepare my foundation first, then I'll do it myself first and leave the rest to you." Although she said this, Andy didn't appreciate it at all. She rolled her eyes but didn't say anything sarcastic. However, her expression was still extremely cold. Yoon Shirshir went to the makeup room and started to carefully prepare her foundation. Her skin was very good. Like other artists, they couldn't wait to cover their faces with 5 layers of foundation. However, she only needed 1 layer and it would be perfect. Hence, Yoon Shirshir walked out very quickly. Andy was shocked. "Why are you so fast? It's already done." Andy frowned and said sarcastically, "You don't have to be so perfunctory, right? In any case, you're the one who needs to be filmed. Is it really okay to be so perfunctory? If the foundation isn't good, my makeup will be smudged when it's done. There are many ignorant people who think that they're born beautiful and don't need to prepare a foundation. Haha. In the end, didn't they end up in such a sorry state?" Yoon Shirshir raised her eyebrows. "Then Master Andy, do you want to see for yourself if my foundation passes?" Andy said impatiently, "Go sit in your seat. I'll do your makeup first. Anyway, it's your face in the mirror. Even if the foundation isn't done well, it has nothing to do with me." After saying this, she glanced at the corner of her eyes and signaled. Yoon Shirshir sat down obediently. Andy walked over and raised her head. She saw that elegant and refined face in the mirror. Clear, jade-like, flawless, beautiful. Although she had only put on a layer of foundation to balance her skin tone, she hadn't put on any makeup, and she hadn't even outlined her eyeliner. However, at first glance, her refined temperament was completely natural. She was like an otherworldly celestial in a painting, beautiful to the extreme. She suddenly felt a burning sensation on her face, as if she had been slapped. It was a slap in the face. At this time, she had no choice but to admit that some people were really born beautiful. Even if it was just a thin layer, it could still shine brightly. Andy bit her lip unwillingly and began to put on her makeup. Even though she had some prejudices against Yoon Shirshir, Andy was very professional when it came to styling. Although she had always been arrogant, she was very dedicated and professional when it came to her career. When it came to professionalism, her attitude was serious, and she could not afford to be careless. This time, the style used for the interview was pure and innocent. Therefore, Andy used Japanese crystal nude makeup for her. However, nude makeup required the most exquisite technique and foundation. Whether it was the eyeliner or the blush, it had to be extremely natural and fresh. Therefore, when the makeup was done, Yoon Shirshir in the mirror presented a different kind of beauty. Pure and beautiful. Every frown and smile revealed a kind of youthful sweetness. Chapter 1407. Andy looked at the beautiful woman in the mirror. For a moment, her heart was filled with jealousy and disgust. The disdain in her eyes became more obvious. "Yoon Shirshir, do you know why I hate you so much?" Andy suddenly looked at the person in the mirror and asked coldly. Yoon Shirshir was stunned and confused. She shook her head blankly. Andy's words were sharp and vicious. I hate you. Not because of your low status, but because of your disgusting ambition and face. She had always been a straightforward person. If there was something on her mind, she would say it. She didn't like to hide anything. Yoon Shirshir asked calmly, Ambition? I admit that you are very beautiful and have outstanding innate qualities. Also, I've seen your performance and your acting is indeed very powerful. But in my life, what I hate the most are female celebrities who do anything to get to the top. After she finished speaking, her eyes were filled with an overbearing sharpness that was extremely sharp. Yoon Shirshir smiled faintly. I don't know what you're talking about. Seeing her attitude, Andy was even more certain that she was like what she had imagined. She would use any means to create hype and get to the headlines. Her impression of her fell to the bottom. She went straight to the point and asked, You're the one who created the rumor about you and Gu Xingze, aren't you? You're so scheming. Andy sighed and narrowed her eyes. Her eyes were filled with disgust. There are many people like you in the entertainment industry. Just because you're in the same movie as Xingze, you're starting to think that you're infallible. You've just debuted and you're already thinking of climbing up the social ladder? Recently, the rumor about you and Xingze has been spreading like wildfire. I think you must have taken a fancy to Xingze's unshakable popularity and used it to create hype for yourself. Moreover, you shamelessly tied yourself to Xingze to get to the top. How can you be so disgusting? From the beginning to the end, Yoon Shirshir only looked at her calmly. After listening to her in one breath, she suddenly smiled. You don't have to be so agitated, do you? Yoon Shirshir looked at her through the mirror and suddenly smiled, but exposed her. You're so excited. You must like Xingze, right? Andy's face turned red as she angrily rebuked, Don't talk nonsense. Is that so? Yoon Shirshir, however, smiled with interest. But I see that you're so excited. If I didn't know, I would think that I stole your boyfriend. Shut up. Andy flew into a rage out of humiliation. Don't make wild guesses. I don't treat Xingze the way you described. Yoon Shirshir glanced at her and actually thought that this Andy was so awkward that it was adorable. His words clearly revealed his fanatical worship and yearning for Gu Xingze, as if he was a god, but his words were extremely awkward and he refused to admit it. Then why are you so agitated? Besides, how do you know it's a publicity stunt? What if Xingze and I are a couple? Yoon Shirshir deliberately teased her. However, Andy was more innocent than she thought. When she heard Yoon Shirshir's teasing words, she immediately exploded. What? You're dating Xingze? Yoon Shirshir deliberately kept her in suspense. This has nothing to do with you. How does it have nothing to do with me? Tell me, what's your relationship with Xingze? Andy was so nervous that her face turned red and she looked like she was about to cry. Chapter 1408. It's a secret. After saying that, she stood up and went to change her clothes. Andy was left standing on the spot with a sullen expression, clenching her fists in anger. The chief editor of the interview quickly rushed over with the cameraman. First, they shot a set of fashion photos for Yoon Shirshir in the studio. Yoon Shirshir changed into a pink floral gown from Chanel's spring collection. She wore a flower crown on her head, had wavy hair, and wore a pair of red high heels. She looked sweet. Previously, when she was undergoing training at Huanyu, Yoon Shirshir had a strong sense of being in front of the camera. Now, standing in front of the camera, she was able to move freely. Every pose did not require much explanation. She could naturally express the ideal state that the cameraman wanted to express. At times, she would hold the photo frame and rub her hair lazily with one hand. She would pout and pretend to be annoyed. At times, she would hold a lollipop in her hand and widen her beautiful eyes in surprise. She looked playful and cute. At other times, she would lean lazily against the wall, her curly hair slanting over her round shoulders and the corners of her eyes slightly curved. The cameraman took a few sets of shots in a row. During the intermission, he held the camera and browsed through the photos taken, but he could not bear to delete a few. Her performance was too good. She was blessed with beauty and performance. At this moment, only one word came to his mind. God's favorite. God doted on her too much and gave her such perfect looks. Standing at the side, Andy's mind was blank. Her thoughts were still stuck on Yoon Shirshir's purposefully mysterious words. What if Xingze and I are a couple? What does that mean? What is her relationship with Gu Xingze? Are they really a couple? That's impossible. Gu Xingze was famous in the industry for keeping women at arm's length. He was quite cold and ascetic. There were almost no women around him. Apart from some groundless rumors, most of them were created by the women. He was a rare and high-quality idol. Many people in the industry even suspected that he was gay. So much so that after so many years in the industry, almost every woman who acted with him had a clean relationship with him. This was simply a wonder in the industry. However, when Andy thought about it, he was stunned. Xingze had been involved in a few scandals, but they were all created by the woman. In the end, Gu Xingze's studio came forward to clarify the matter. However, this time, Gu Xingze's studio did not do anything about the scandal with Yoon Shirshir. Instead, they cooperated with Yoon Shirshir's team to hype up their relationship. This would have been impossible in the past. With such an ambiguous attitude, it was hard not to think of something. Could it be that what Yoon Shirshir said was true? Was she really dating Gu Xingze? Andy's eyes shone as she looked at Yoon Shirshir, who was in the studio, continuously matching the photographer's style. The sweet and gentle smile on her face was clearly that of a woman deeply in love. Could it be true? Andy's heart skipped a beat, and he began to fidget. In fact, the reason why she was so concerned about this problem was that she had been in love with Gu Xingze for a long time. From the first time she met Gu Xingze, she was infatuated with this aloof and handsome man and regarded him as her Adonis. Chapter 1409. Andy had silently supported him since he was a popular young actor when he first debuted to the current popular Heavenly King. But now, the man she could only wish for was actually in a relationship with another woman. She was naturally upset. Bizarre fashion editor. Did you accept the role of the green apple by chance or coincidence? Yoon Shirshir. At that time, the green apple was holding a national audition for the female lead. Coincidentally, I was selected by director Lin and accepted the role. Bizarre fashion editor. Which character do you like the most in this script? Yoon Shirshir. I prefer In Shachuan. Bizarre fashion editor. Why? What is it about this character that attracts you? Yoon Shirshir. In Shachuan is a very pure character. She is a stubborn person. Love is love. If you love someone, you will give it your all, even if you have to make the whole world your enemy. Her stubbornness and infatuation move me. Bizarre fashion editor. Have you read the original novel before accepting the role? Yoon Shirshir. I have read the original novel. It is very well written. I stayed up late to finish reading it. Bizarre fashion editor. When you read the novel, did you ever think that you would be playing your favorite character one day? Yoon Shirshir. I didn't think of that. Bizarre fashion editor. Compared to reading a novel, how does acting feel? Yoon Shirshir. Reading a novel and acting are two different concepts. When you read a novel, you will be immersed in the world of the novel. You will be influenced by the love and hate entanglements. You will be immersed in it and your emotions will follow the plot closely. However, when you act in a movie, it is different. Every detail had to be carefully grasped. Every emotion had to be placed in the shoes of the character and brought into the plot to enrich it. Bizarre fashion editor. Did you do any preparation before filming? Yoon Shirshir. What kind of preparation? Bizarre fashion editor. Just some preparation for the role? Yoon Shirshir. I read the script carefully a few times. Bizarre fashion editor. Was In Shachuan's role challenging in The Green Apple? Yoon Shirshir. It was alright. Bizarre fashion editor. How did you figure out the character's inner world? Yoon Shirshir. Try your best to immerse yourself in the character's inner world. Bizarre fashion editor-in-chief. Do you have any expectations for this movie? The interview progressed step by step. Yoon Shirshir faced the camera, held the microphone, and patiently answered every question, whether it was friendly or harsh. Some answers were memorized in advance, and some needed to be improvised. However, she didn't memorize any of them. She just acted as she pleased. Therefore, Bazaar's chief editor was a little dissatisfied. Her answer was so empty and casual. There was almost no explosive point, no gimmick. This interview was clearly given a script. Why didn't Yoon Shirshir follow the script? Such an interview had no effect at all. Thus, the editor-in-chief suddenly threw out a sensitive question. In the movie, you and Xingze acted as a couple. How's your relationship outside the movie? As soon as she finished speaking, Yoon Shirshir frowned. Andy, who was standing at the side and listening silently, felt his nerves jump. Almost with a swoosh, he turned his gaze to her. Yoon Shirshir was silent for a while before replying indifferently, "Pretty good." The editor-in-chief broke out in a cold sweat. "What do you mean by pretty good?" Chapter 14:10. Yoon Shirshir smiled and said, "Outside of filming, Gu Xingze is a senior who takes good care of his juniors. He gives me a lot of pointers. Sometimes, when there are areas where I'm lacking in filming, he would patiently point it out." The chief editor was dissatisfied with her ambiguous answer, so she threw another bombshell and pursued relentlessly. Obviously, she was deliberately creating a gimmick. "Is Xingze your ideal type?" As soon as she said this, even Yoon Shirshir was stunned. She looked at the chief editor who asked the question and saw the burning desire in her eyes, as well as ambition. She suddenly understood the chief editor's intention. It was obvious that she had set up so many difficult questions so that she could get an explosive answer from her mouth. This question was extremely tricky. If she answered, "Yes," then, following this topic, the chief editor would throw out more difficult questions, and even some disgusting ones. If she answered, "No," then this answer might not be too offensive. Moreover, the production team and crew had recently been hyping up the scandal between her and Gu Xingze to gain popularity. Although this method was somewhat despicable, it was Qin Zhou's method and also the studio's plan. If she ruined it, Qin Zhou would definitely give her a scolding. Yoon Shirshir pondered for a moment and then gave an almost impeccable answer. "I believe that Xingze is the ideal type in the hearts of many girls." Her answer was so cunning that the chief editor couldn't find any fault with it, let alone find a way to start. Andy, on the other hand, was stunned. She thought that Yoon Shirshir would definitely use this topic to hype up the scandal between her and Gu Xingze. She didn't expect her to perfectly avoid this topic. She couldn't help but look at Yoon Shirshir suspiciously. She felt that this person was very strange. She clearly had such a good opportunity to create hype, but she didn't do it. What was the meaning of this? Could it be that she was playing hard to get? The chief editor was obviously very angry, and he continued to throw out one difficult question after another. Then, "Do you think Xingze is your type?" Of course. In the movie, I played In Xiachuan and chased him so hard. Do you think Xingze is a perfect idol? Without a doubt, he is a perfect idol and a respectable senior. The chief editor was once again rendered speechless by her reply. "Do you think you're Xingze's ideal type?" Well, you'll have to ask Senior Xingze. In the movie, Yang Mi's character has many scenes with Xingze. Between you and Yang Mi, who do you think is closer to his ideal type? "I'll do it." The chief editor's eyes lit up. This Yoon Shirshir actually dared to answer in such a way. Yang Chong was her senior, and she actually dared to disrespect her senior. This answer was really explosive. Thus, she kissed him relentlessly. Why? With a mischievous smile, Yoon Shirshir begged for mercy. "Because we're acting as a couple. Please don't break us up. Okay?" The chief editor didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her witty reply. She was angry and speechless, but when she looked at Yoon Shirshir's mischievous begging for mercy, she couldn't get angry no matter what. This artiste was probably the most helpless artiste she had ever interviewed. Chapter 14:11. But this girl didn't know how to go with the flow. She couldn't be blamed. When the interview ended, she couldn't help but say, "Yoon Shirshir, I gave you a chance, but you didn't know how to make use of it. What a waste of your manager's efforts to ask me to take care of you. You don't know how to take advantage of the situation. It would be a miracle if you could become famous." Yoon Shirshir smiled and said, "Thank you for your kind words. If the movie is released and the box office is a hit, I'll treat you to tea. The editor-in-chief was completely speechless, but she was also touched by her honest and cute side. Her unpretentious manner was rare in the entertainment industry. Andy was about to leave when she suddenly thought of something. She walked up to Yoon Shirshir with a hostile expression. Yoon Shirshir looked at her warily. Just as she thought that she was going to make things difficult for her, Andy asked suspiciously, "Just now, why didn't you answer according to the script?" "What? Don't play dumb." Andy carried her bag and looked cold and arrogant. "I just secretly looked at the interview draft. The script was obviously mainly about the rumored relationship between you and Xingze. Why didn't you answer according to the script and deviated from the main topic?" She had just seen the interview draft. The main topic of the interview, other than promoting the movie, was mainly about her and Gu Xingze's recent rumored relationship. In the end, her few replies deviated from the main topic. The editor-in-chief was so angry that she didn't know what to ask in the end. Previously, in Andy's eyes, Yoon Shirshir was a shrewd newcomer. As a newcomer who had just debuted, she had accepted a role in a film directed by Lin Fengtian. She even had a hot scandal with Gu Xingze that swept the hot search list on Weibo. If she wasn't scheming and shrewd, how could she have made it this far? She had entered the entertainment industry, and now, she knew how muddy the waters were. She knew that in a place like the entertainment industry, not many female celebrities were quiet. Most of them had sugar daddies supporting them. Yoon Shirshir was no exception. She had also thought that Yoon Shirshir was a scheming woman who wanted to make use of Gu Xingze to gain popularity. She thought that Yoon Shirshir was a white lotus who would do anything to gain popularity. In the end, she clearly had such a good opportunity, but she didn't take advantage of it. This made her a little confused. Yoon Shirshir's face was cold as she said truthfully, "Because I forgot to memorize the script." Andy was stunned for a moment before he flew into a rage out of humiliation. "You forgot to memorize the script? Please, do you not value this interview that much?" An exclusive interview with Bizarre Fashion was a symbol of status in the industry. Many female stars could only dream of it. Yoon Shirshir had Qin Zhou as her backer, so she was accepted as an exception. She was given an interview script, but she didn't memorize it? There was such a thing? Yoon Shirshir said indifferently, "It's not that I don't pay enough attention to it. That is, I just don't like acting in real life." Andy was completely stunned. Yoon Shirshir continued, "Acting is my job. Work is work, but in reality I want to stay true to myself. I don't want to be an actress in real life." After she finished speaking, there was a dead silence. Andy looked at her in shock. She didn't expect her to answer like this. After a long silence that felt like a century, Andy suddenly burst out laughing. "What are you laughing at?" she asked suspiciously. Chapter 14:12. Andy replied, I've been in the industry for so many years, but I've never seen such a strange artiste like you." She actually said that she didn't want to act outside of work. But wasn't the entertainment industry like this? Although it looked glamorous on the surface, many sugar daddies despised the male and female artistes in the entertainment industry. This was because once they entered the entertainment industry, they had to wear a mask for the rest of their lives. Acting in front of fans, acting in front of the director, and acting in front of the audience. What was even more ridiculous was that some female artistes and male artistes got married because of benefits. After they got married, they went their separate ways and each had their own sugar daddies. Could you imagine that? Facing the person whom she had been with for her entire life, she still had an ambiguous relationship with her sugar daddies. Her worldview was completely turned upside down. Hence, from what she knew, Yoon Shirshir should be such a woman. She especially despised her. But Yoon Shirshir had completely changed her worldview. She obviously had the chance, but she didn't take advantage of it. She was different from those female artistes who used all their effort and schemes to get to the top. Andy had initially thought that Yoon Shirshir was acting in front of her. However, after this short period of interaction, her gaze never left her. She couldn't tell that she was acting at all. She was a very straightforward woman. She had been in the industry for so many years and had already trained her sharp eyes. She could tell if someone was acting or not. Yoon Shirshir was a woman who didn't act at all. Hence, she had become a fan of Yoon Shirshir. Putting everything else aside, just the fact that Yoon Shirshir didn't bother to use Gu Xingze to create hype was enough for her to admire her. Hence, Andy suddenly pursed her lips awkwardly and said a little guiltily, "Yoon Shirshir, I'm sorry. Previously, I thought that you were like those women in the entertainment industry who used all their effort to get to the top. I've wronged you. If I've offended you earlier, please forgive me." Yoon Shirshir curved her lips and then laughed nonchalantly. "Ha, it's nothing. If I must apologize, I want to apologize to you too." Andy raised his eyebrows, but he didn't understand what she meant. Yoon Shirshir confessed, "Actually, Gu Xingze and I are not a couple. I said that on purpose." "Why?" Andy was a little surprised. "No reason." Yoon Shirshir cocked a brow and plainly added, "I just want you to know that speaking irresponsibly is actually very hurtful." As soon as she said this, Andy was stunned, as if her heart had been pierced by her words. Her expression changed slightly, but there was a hint of guilt and shame. She understood Yoon Shirshir's intention. He wanted her to put herself in his shoes and feel how hateful it was to speak irresponsibly. From the moment they first met, she had malicious speculations about Yoon Shirshir. She even used sharp and humiliating words to mock, insult, and slander her. Perhaps she couldn't feel how hurtful her words in front of Yoon Shirshir were. Hence, Yoon Shirshir deliberately twisted the truth to make her feel uncomfortable. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those irresponsible words and maliciously speculated about you." Andy apologized sincerely. She was a magnanimous and straightforward person who spoke her mind. If she was right, she was right. If she was wrong, she would admit it. However, Yoon Shirshir didn't take it to heart. She shook her head and said, "It's okay. We can be friends in the future." Chapter 14:13. She felt that Andy was a good person. Even though Andy had a bad impression of her when they first met, she still did a good job styling her. This at least showed that she wasn't a bad person and was very responsible. Just this point alone proved that she was a person worth befriending. Moreover, after Andy realized her mistake, she apologized sincerely. Yoon Shirshir was very touched. Yoon Shirshir reached out her hand to her. Andy lowered his eyes and looked at her deeply. Then, he smiled faintly and took the hand that she offered to him. They held each other's hands tightly. "Okay." Before leaving, Andy suddenly asked worriedly, "Are you and Xingzhe really not in a relationship?" Yoon Shirshir was defeated. She surrendered helplessly. "Please, I never lie. If I'm not, then I'm not. There's no need to lie to you, right?" "Then, can I ask for some gossip?" Andy leaned closer to her curiously. "Does Xingzhe have a girlfriend?" "I don't think so," Yoon Shirshir said. "Don't think so?" She was a little doubtful. Yoon Shirshir said carefully, "I don't think so. At least she hadn't heard of it. Xingzhe and I aren't that close." Andy nodded. Her face was full of joy and her heart was jumping with joy. "Shirshir, thank you." Andy thanked him from the bottom of his heart. Then he blew a kiss and left. In the afternoon, Qin Zhou rushed back after receiving a call from Chief Editor Baza. The moment he got back, he gave Yoon Shirshir a dressing down. "Do you know how hard it was for me to get you Bazaar's resources? Didn't you have interview drafts for you to memorize? Didn't you memorize them? I stayed up late to write those drafts for you. I even worked hard to highlight the key points. In the end, you didn't even read them. What were your answers?" Qin Zhou was furious. Originally, the matter of the supporting role in the hit drama had been finalized. This was something to be happy about. On the way back, he received a call from the chief editor. She complained about Yoon Shirshir's uncooperative interview. Qin Zhou was very hurt. Bazaar's interview wasn't something that anyone could do. No matter how many female celebrities tried their best, they might not even be able to get half a page. One had to know that Yoon Shirshir had just debuted. She didn't have a high status or a high net worth. She was able to get into Bazaar all because of his skills and resources. It was all because of him that she was able to get this interview. In the end, when it came to her, her answer was so willful. The chief editor was so angry that she wanted to cry and laugh at the same time, but she was helpless. Yun Shirshir looked at Qin Zhou pitifully, but she obediently allowed him to criticize her without retorting. Shirshir, the scandal between you and Xingzhe was planned by both our teams. Moreover, we followed your suggestion back then and you didn't object to it too much. But why didn't you cherish such an opportunity when it was right in front of you? So many artists want to get a share of Xingzhe's popularity, but none of them are lucky enough to do so. You have it, so why don't you cherish it? Qin Zhou was puzzled. Yun Shirshir said unwillingly, because I want to rely on my own strength. I don't want to use Xingzhe to climb up. Qin Zhou was taken aback by her sincere explanation. After a while, he looked at her helplessly and sighed. I know how you feel, but the entertainment industry has such rules. You have to follow them. Chapter 14:14. It was not that easy to carve out a bloody path in the entertainment industry. Moreover, there was no such thing as relying solely on one's ability to make a name for oneself. You should know that I've said before that I've poured a lot of ambition into you. I hope that you can cooperate with me. I've made Xingzhe famous, and my goal is to help you become one of the best in the industry. But you're putting me in a difficult position. He said this earnestly as his eyes fell on her. They were very deep and heavy. The meaning behind his words was profound. Yun Shirshir suddenly fell silent. Qin Zhou continued, First of all, I've been in the industry for so long. I have many ways to protect you. You don't have to worry about the unspoken rules in the industry. You don't have to accompany me to bed, to dinner, to have fun, or to drink with me. What you need to do, other than relying on your ability, is to cooperate with me. She suddenly said unwillingly. Actually, I don't understand. Xingzhe has been in the industry for so long, 10 years, and there have never been any scandals about him. He's so popular because of his ability, isn't it? Why can he do it, but I can't? Why could Gu Xingzhe become a high-quality idol without any scandals? Why couldn't she? She couldn't figure it out. Silly girl. It's because men and women are different in the entertainment industry. Why? Qin Zhou explained patiently. In the entertainment industry, most of the consumers are women. Generally speaking, women have many beautiful fantasies about their idols. Most of them see their idols as the prince charming of their dreams, the nation's husband. Have you ever seen a woman who wants her husband to have an entangled scandal with another woman? When he said this, Yun Shirshir suddenly understood. Oh, but women are different. Since women are the main consumers, if a female artist wants to gain exposure, other than relying on her beauty and acting skills, she also has to create a persona. Do you know what else she has to rely on? I understand. She has to satisfy the public's curiosity. Yun Shirshir replied. Qin Zhou smiled in relief. You're not too stupid. Women loved to watch the fun and gossip. If there was a female celebrity who was entangled with the male idol in their hearts, they would definitely pay a lot of attention to that female celebrity. This way, we'll have more exposure. But we'll definitely face a lot of serious injuries and malicious speculation, just like Andy today. That's understandable. Qin Zhou smiled, but he didn't deny it. He said frankly, in the initial stage of this hype, you'll suffer a lot of malicious slander. Putting everything else aside, just your Weibo alone will definitely be crushed by Xingzhe's army of fans. So, during this time, don't go on Weibo and read the comments. It would have been better if he hadn't said anything. Once he did, Yun Shirshir felt terrified. Gu Xingzhe's fans were known as the United Nations Army. The reason for this description was that Gu Xingzhe's fans came from different nationalities. There was a huge number of them, and it was a spectacular sight. It was said that he had broken the record of 100 million fans. 100 million. This was just the number of fans registered on the official website. Those who had not been recorded yet were not included. With such terrifying data, Yun Shirshir naturally felt an inexplicable fear. Shirshir, I want you to understand something. Chapter 14:15. Yun Shirshir shook her head blankly. I don't know. She couldn't understand the meaning behind Qin Zhou's words. He commented, "It's because it's not like Starbucks, which is widely known but not famous." Yes. Qin Zhou suddenly said, "Let's make an assumption then. Suppose one day, Xingzhe came to this shop on a whim, ordered this cup of coffee, took a photo and posted it online. Then, wouldn't this cup of coffee attract a lot of attention?" Yes. This is exposure and the effect of fans. This way, Xingzhe's fans will notice this coffee shop. They might even come and order the same coffee as Xingzhe, and this shop will become famous. Yun Shishir suddenly understood what Qin Zhou was trying to say. Qin Zhou continued to explain, "Maybe Gu Xingzhe's fans have a bad attitude when they come into contact with you, but at least they're paying attention to you. If you do well enough and the fans see it, they'll turn from haters to fans. However, if you don't expose this piece of jade, there will never be a day where you will be noticed by others. The entertainment industry is full of talents. You've just debuted, so you have to find more opportunities to show yourself and get the public's approval." After a pause, he added, "So, the so-called hype is just a chance for the public to pay attention to you and give you a chance to show yourself. Do you understand?" Yun Shishir nodded. "I understand." Qin Zhou held her shoulders with a serious expression and said in a deep voice, "Listen, Shishir. Many times an artist is like a product, and a product needs marketing and packaging. You should understand this principle. So you have to follow my orders in the future. Don't worry, I won't harm you." Yun Shishir was silent for a long time before she nodded slowly. "I understand. Qin Zhou, I'll do my best to cooperate with you in the future." "Yes." Only then did Qin Zhou nod with a smile. He raised his hand to rub her head and patted it gently, as if he was an elder caring for a junior. "Shishir, sometimes you're really smart. You understand what I'm saying to you immediately. You're a good learner." After Yun Shishir left the company, she was still thinking about Qin Zhou's words. "There's no such thing as fairness in this circle. There's only the law of the jungle. It's a simple and crude principle. I hope you understand." Deep down, she was actually very unwilling to create a scandal with Gu Xingzhe. The reason was because she felt that it would be very troublesome for her. Obviously, there was no such thing, but she had to use it to create public opinion and achieve the goal of creating a publicity stunt. It was really quite despicable. However, it seemed that this was the rule of the circle. If they didn't follow it, they would face the danger of being eliminated. In that case, she should also put down those thoughts that she shouldn't have and follow Qin Zhou's orders to do everything well. Yun Shishir had just walked out of the company when the driver had not arrived yet. His phone suddenly rang. She picked up the phone, and a charming and sexy voice came from the other end. "Baby, where are you?" His deep and magnetic words tugged at her heartstrings. Yun Shishir was shocked. She glanced at the caller ID and realized that it was from an unknown number. She asked warily, "Who are you?" Chapter 14:16. Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment before she chuckled. "Xiao Jie, it's you? I didn't recognize you just now. Sorry. Sis, where are you now? I'll treat you to a cup of tea." "I'm at the office." Gong Jie asked for the address and said that he would be there soon. In less than 10 minutes, a Porsche stopped at the entrance. Gong Jie opened the car door and got out. He walked in front of Yun Shishir and gave her a gentlemanly bow. He kissed her cheek. "Beautiful lady, sorry to keep you waiting." Yun Shishir giggled and looked at him. "You've learned the etiquette quite well. Where did you learn it?" Gong Jie smiled warmly and explained, "When I was young, I learned it from my family's etiquette teacher. Not long after he returned to the Gong family, he began to learn the etiquette of the upper class. As one of the heirs of the Gong family, it was necessary for him to have excellent aristocratic etiquette." Gong Jie asked gently, "Sis, I'll treat you to a cup of tea. Do you have a place to recommend?" The adoration in his words was obvious. Just as Yu had said, even Gong Jie himself did not realize that he was a senior sistercon. He lowered his head and looked at Yun Shishir with eyes that hid too much tenderness. If his subordinates were to see this scene, they would definitely be shocked. One had to know that, in their eyes, Gong Jie was an extremely cold and scheming person. He rarely smiled, but when he did, the shrewd and scheming glint in his eyes would make one's hair stand on end and shudder in fear. Probably, no one had ever seen him show such a gentle and doting smile to anyone. His eyes, which were usually cold and stern, were slightly curved at this moment, as if many small stars were hidden in them. His handsome eyes were like stars. They were really like stars. Yun Shirshir looked at him and could not help but fall into a daze. She still remembered that when she was young, she and Gong Jie stood together. Many people said that they looked very similar, as if they were cast from the same mold. The adults all said that it was rare to see twins that looked so similar, especially those eyes. They were exactly the same. At that time, she had also cut her hair short and wore the same clothes as the Gong Jie. When they stood together, it was impossible to tell who was who. They even made a lot of jokes. She remembered that her mother had once bathed her. After she was done, she went out to sign for a package and came back to bathe her again. In the end, she realized that she had mistaken her for Xiao Jie, so she washed her face again. There were many such blunders because she looked too similar to Gong Jie. Even after so many years, when she stood next to him, she still had the illusion that she was looking into a mirror. The only difference was that Gong Jie had an arrogant and fierce aura. His hairstyle was different and his figure was different as well. However, their faces were very similar. Therefore, she could even see the shadows of Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen in his eyes. Genes were really a mysterious thing. When Gong Jie saw that she kept staring at his face, he could not help but touch his face and raise his eyebrows suspiciously. "Why do you keep staring at me?" "It's nothing." Yun Shirshir paused for a moment and laughed. "It's just that I found something rather strange." "What is it?" "Look at your eyes. They're so beautiful." Chapter 14:17. Yun Shirshir slowly inched closer to him. "Your eyes are exactly the same as mine. Just like when we were young, everyone said that our eyes are very similar." After saying that, she smiled and gently held his handsome face. She intimately touched the tip of his nose and gently rubbed against it. Gong Jie's heart softened and his face turned red. The redness spread from his ears all the way to his cheeks. His heart felt as if it had been pierced open and a warm current was slowly flowing into it. Such an intimate action made him feel emotional all of a sudden. When they were young, their mother liked to rub their noses intimately. Yun Shirshir, on the other hand, often did such intimate actions with him. In his memories, he could still remember that short and happy time. He and Yun Shirshir hid under the blanket. At that time, the winter was very cold and there was no electric blanket. The two little guys pitifully hugged the hot water bottle to sleep. In the middle of the night, the hot water bottle turned cold. They woke up from the cold and shivered under the blanket. They hugged each other pitifully to warm each other. Their days were a little difficult. However, there was a plain happiness amidst the bitterness. Thinking of this, Gong Jie said, "Because you're my older sister and I'm your younger brother." After pausing for a moment, a trace of pride appeared on his face. "When we were young, no one could tell who was me and who was you." "Humph, you're still talking about it. When you did something wrong when we were young, when wasn't I the one who took the blame for you?" Yun Shirshir suddenly complained, feeling wronged. Gong Jie's expression was a little awkward. He apologized weakly. "Sis, I'm sorry. I was wrong." After saying that, he even tugged at the corner of her shirt coquettishly. Yun Shirshir was tickled by his careful attempt to curry favor with her. She giggled and then said, "All right, it's been so long. I don't blame you anymore." After saying that, she couldn't help but reach out and touch the tip of his nose. "Let's go. I'll treat you to a cup of tea. I know a dessert shop that tastes good. She used to bring you there often." "Okay." Gong Jie helped her into the car and drove away. Just as the car left, not far away, behind the shadow of a tree, a sneaky figure suddenly appeared. It was a paparazzi who was crouching with a camera. Using the shadow of the tree as cover, no one noticed him at all. Even Gong Jie, who was used to being vigilant, didn't notice him. He had been in the industry for many years and was an experienced paparazzi. In order to capture some private shots of celebrities, he would do anything. He lowered his head and flipped through the photo album. He had captured all the intimate scenes between Yoon Shurshur and Gong Jie, frame by frame. Some of the angles were so tricky that at first glance, one would think that the two were kissing intimately. It was not a waste. He had not squatted for so long. It was not a waste of effort. In fact, he had squatted near the entrance of Huanyu Entertainment. He had initially wanted to take some shots of Gu Xingze. However, he didn't manage to capture Gu Xingze. Instead, he managed to capture Yoon Shurshur. He even managed to capture some valuable shots. In fact, Yoon Shurshur's shots weren't that expensive. If they were sold to some media, they probably wouldn't be able to fetch a high price. However, that was in the past. It was different now. Now, Yoon Shurshur was Gu Xingze's rumored lover. Moreover, the shots he had taken were very gimmicky. They might be worth some money. Chapter 14:18. Yoon Shurshur brought Gong Jie to the dessert shop that she used to frequent. It was a very small shop. Unlike the dessert shops in the downtown area, there were a lot of people, but the decoration was very stylish. Therefore, the customers who patronized were all regular customers. Yoon Shurshur chose a private room and ordered a few signature desserts. Gong Jie rested his chin on one hand and quietly watched her every move. Even if he just looked at her like this, every frown and every smile was enjoyable. After Yoon Shurshur finished ordering desserts, she turned around and saw him staring at her in a daze. She couldn't help but smile. "Why do you keep staring at me?" Gong Jie said willfully, "I like it." Yoon Shurshur smiled helplessly. Gong Jie said again, "Because I feel like I can't get enough of you." We've been separated for so long. It's been 15 years. I want to make up for all that I've missed in 15 years. Gong Jie said truthfully. Yoon Shurshur's heart skipped a beat, and her eyes became as gentle as water. "Xiao Jie, I'm very happy and very touched. I never dared to think that I would meet you again in this life." Gong Jie's eyes flashed, and then there was a hint of loneliness in them. He always felt that he seemed to have missed out on a lot of beautiful things. No matter how he tried to make up for it, he felt that this gap was difficult to make up for. The person he loved the most in his heart didn't leave behind any fragments of him in these 15 years. He didn't participate in her youth, didn't participate in her beautiful years, and missed the most important scenes in her life. He was absent from her life, and she was also absent from his life. In these 15 years, they had lost too many things. The desserts were served one after another. Yoon Shurshur pushed a tiramisu in front of him and smiled. "Try it. The desserts here are amazing." "Okay." Gong Jie nodded and then picked up the spoon to taste it. "How's the taste?" she asked expectantly. Gong Jie nodded slowly. With the spoon in his mouth, his eyes curved slightly. "Not bad. It's very sweet." In fact, he didn't like desserts that much. In the Gong family, he didn't even look at the desserts in the afternoon. "I'm sick of it." However, Yoon Shurshur ordered something different. He liked it. He liked to enjoy every moment with her. Even if he didn't do anything and just looked at her like this, he wouldn't feel bored. Yoon Shurshur's gaze suddenly fell on his phone screen that had lit up. It was a rather unique phone. She said it was unique because she had never seen this brand before. It was also a unique style. Out of curiosity, she took it and looked at it. "What brand is your phone? Why haven't I seen it before?" Gong Jie smiled. "This is a satellite phone that we developed ourselves. You can't buy it." Because of his work, he used a satellite phone which was developed internally by Hurricane Group. Many mobile phones on the market now have security risks. Therefore, the mobile phone he used was a system developed by the company which was highly confidential. She tapped on it. Unknowingly, the wallpaper on the phone had been changed to the photos she took. Yoon Shurshur saw it and blushed. She looked up and said angrily, Your wallpaper. When did you change it?" "I changed it a long time ago." Gong Jie smiled slightly. "I like your photos the most. They're very beautiful." That day, after he found out about her identity, he went back and searched for many of her photos and fashion shows like a crazy man. Chapter 14:19. Yoon Shurshur blushed. To be honest, She was quite embarrassed that her portrait was being used as wallpaper. It was quite embarrassing. Hence, she said quietly, "Change it." Gong Jie was slightly surprised and asked suspiciously, "Why do you want to change it? It feels so embarrassing." Yun Shirshir covered her face, but she couldn't hide her blushing cheeks. Gong Jie was stunned for a moment, but he couldn't help but laugh. He raised his eyebrows in amusement and said, "Humph, it turns out that sister can feel embarrassed too." Xiao Jie. Yun Shirshir pretended to be angry and pouted, but her eyes were smiling. "Change it. It feels so embarrassing." Gong Jie obviously didn't think much of it. He smiled and said, "What's there to be embarrassed about? Sister is so beautiful. I changed my phone wallpaper to yours because I want to see you every night before I go to bed. The first person I see when I wake up is also you." Yun Shirshir's face turned even redder when he said that. She lowered her eyes and covered her face, but she looked extremely charming. Gong Jie looked at her. He didn't know why, but he felt a little jealous of Yu. This kid had kept him in the dark for so long. He had joined the Hurricane group more than a year ago, but he didn't expect that this kid, who was hailed as a genius of the century, was actually his little nephew. However, even though he felt that it was unfair, he thought about it again. He wasn't by her side, but Yun Shirshir was silently protected by this kid. He felt satisfied again. Just like that, the two of them spent the whole afternoon at the dessert station. The two of them chatted casually, but most of the time Yun Shirshir was talking. Gong Jie sat opposite her, resting his chin on one hand and listening quietly. However, Yun Shirshir had always avoided talking about what happened when she was 18. She also avoided talking about Yu's biological father. Since she didn't take the initiative to talk about it, Gong Jie didn't ask either. In fact, he had the means to investigate everything that had happened to Yun Shirshir when she was 18 years old. He could even investigate everything that had happened to her in the past 24 years. But he wanted to hear her tell him. However, there was a trace of melancholy in his heart. There was an inexplicable sense of melancholy. The more Yun Shirshir spoke, the more he realized that he had missed out on more than just those 15 years. So many things could happen in 15 years. She was bullied in the orphanage, adopted at the age of 9, admitted to a key junior high school at the age of 12, entered puberty at the age of 13, went to university at the age of 18, and even had a child. These were things that he could have witnessed. The more he listened, the more anxious he felt. Gong Jie couldn't help but lower his head, put a cigarette in his mouth, and lit it with familiarity. Following the flickering of the sparks, a wisp of smoke faintly drifted out. He was not a heavy smoker, but when he was upset, he would smoke a cigarette. Yun Shirshir was stunned by his actions. She looked at him as he sat opposite her, leaning elegantly against the back of the chair. There was a cigarette between his fingers, and his thin lips were lightly sucking on it. Following that, a thin wisp of smoke came out from his lips and nose and dissipated into the air. She was stunned for a moment and instinctively snatched the cigarette from his hand when he took the third puff. Then she fiercely put it out in the ashtray. Gong Jie's eyes flickered. "Sister, when did you learn to smoke?" Yun Shirshir said sullenly, "You're not allowed to smoke." Gong Jie was slightly taken aback and chuckled. She was still treating him like a child. Chapter 14:20. In other words, he was no longer a child. Perhaps in her eyes, he was still the little devil who clung to her from 15 years ago. However, he was now an adult and had mastered the rules and games of adult society. "You can't smoke either." Yun Shirshir paused for a moment and snorted coldly. "You're not allowed to smoke anymore. Okay?" Gong Jie was stunned. Yun Shirshir said angrily, "Be good and listen to me. I don't like Xiao Jie smoking." Gong Jie smiled and rested his chin on his hand. "Okay." His deep gaze landed on her face. His usual arrogance had faded away, and he looked docile and docile. "I'll listen to you." If she didn't allow him to smoke, then he wouldn't smoke. If she didn't like the way he smoked, then he would never smoke again. He was willing to be her favorite Gong Jie in front of her. "That's a good boy." Yun Shirshir was satisfied when she heard that. She reached out and pinched his cheeks. Gong Jie was even more infatuated with her smile. He liked the way she looked when she smiled. It was so gentle and charming. Her beautiful and refined face was like a fairy in a painting. Even if the world stopped at this moment, even if a century passed, he wouldn't get tired of her smile. It was raining heavily outside the window. Gong Jie sent her back to Shanti Walk. Before she left, he returned her purse that she had left in his car and kissed her cheek reluctantly. "Sis, can I still look for you often in the future?" he asked carefully, his gaze full of hope. Yun Shirshir replied matter-of-factly, "Of course, it's just that sometimes I don't have time when I'm working." "Okay. By the way," Yun Shirshir held an umbrella and stood in the rain. Her voice was gentle as she asked, "Xiao Jie, what do you do now?" Gong Jie fell silent. Yun Shirshir tilted her head, puzzled by his silence. After a moment of dead silence, he smiled warmly and replied, "Sis, I'm now running my own company." He gave an ambiguous answer but concealed part of the truth. As the chief commander of the Hurricane Group, he owned a large amount of shares in the Hurricane Group. However, he did not tell her the truth about the background of the Hurricane Group. He didn't dare to imagine what she would think of him if he told her that a casual order from him was worth billions of dollars. This order might lead to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of civilians. He was afraid of her, afraid of him, disgusted with him. She even avoided him. Therefore, he concealed the truth from her. Yun Shirshir was taken aback. Her eyes widened slightly as she exclaimed, "Amazing! Xiao Jie, you're so young, but you're already so successful. Sister, it's raining heavily. You should go home." Gong Jie avoided the topic and urged her. Yun Shirshir nodded, waved at him, and entered the door. Gong Jie stared thoughtfully at her receding figure. All of a sudden, he rolled up the car window and turned his head to look at her. "Back to the office." "Yes, young Master Gong." Along the way, Gong Jie sat in the back seat with a slightly complicated expression. Why did she hide the identity of the child's biological father from him? In fact, he knew that Yu Yu was the blood of the Mu family. His biological father was Mu Yaja. When he first found out about the relationship between Yu Yu and Mu Yaja, he was a little surprised but didn't pay much attention to it. However, when he found out that Yu Yu was Yun Shirshir's son and his little nephew, what was the relationship between Mu Yaja and Yun Shirshir? Chapter 14:21. If they were a couple, why was the child already 7 years old? Why didn't they hold a wedding ceremony? Moreover, Mu Yaja and her were both unmarried. He had checked this before. He had investigated Mu Yaja's background. He was not married and did not have a wife. He only had a son. He had always protected his son well, so he did not find a photo of him. However, the information showed that the child was also 7 years old. It was hard not to associate him with Yu Yu. He remembered that Lisa had brought back a child who looked exactly like Yu Yu. This child was probably the child by Mu Yaja's side. Lisa had said that the child and Yu Yu were identical twins. Since Mu Yaja and his sister had 2 children, and one of the children had been acknowledged by the Mu family, what was the relationship between them? Secret lover. Gong Jie was furious when he thought of this word. If she was really Mu Yaja's secret lover, he would not allow his sister to be with this man. Not to mention the feud between the Gong and Mu families, he would not allow his sister to be wronged because of this secret identity. However, judging from his sister's attitude, it did not seem as simple as a secret lover. At first, he suspected that Yu Yu might be Mu Yaja's biological son. However, when he saw Mu Yaja's photo, even if he wanted to doubt it, he did not have the right to do so. The father and son looked very similar. This level of similarity was even greater than the similarity between Yu Yu and Yun Shirshir. One look and one could tell that they were father and son. Then, what happened when Yun Shirshir was 18 years old? Were they together? 18 years old was still young and innocent. She should have been enjoying her carefree youth. Why did she have a child at such a young age? So early? Did something happen? Or was she forced or bullied? Gong Jie clenched his fists when he thought of this possibility. He wanted to punch Mu Yaja into pieces. Damn it, the more he thought about it, the more frustrated he became. In Gong Jie's heart, his hatred for the Mu family had long been integrated into his bones and blood. It was hard to get rid of it. Since he was young, he had been influenced by the Gong family and knew how much his father hated the Mu family. Similarly, he hated the Mu family to the core. Hence, when he was caught off guard by the relationship between Yun Shirshir and Mu Yaja, he felt lost and did not know how to face the man whom he should address as brother-in-law. This man's blood have that sinner's blood. Sinner's blood. Damn it! He could not accept this fact. Even though he maintained a facade of not knowing the truth in front of Yun Shirshir, he was still conflicted deep down. Gong Jie stroked his fringe anxiously, his deep-set eyes hidden in the shadows. Yun Shirshir's schedule was busy again. The casting of Lethal Beauty was almost done. However, for the sake of confidentiality, the 4 main leads and several important supporting actors and actresses were kept a secret. Even Yun Shirshir did not know who would be playing the roles. She only knew that Lin Ji and Hua Jin would be playing the roles. As for the other supporting roles, the dust had not settled yet. They were still in the midst of casting. Chapter 1422. In this smokeless war, whoever had a strong background would be able to show their faces in this drama. It was a realistic and cruel problem. Yun Shirshir suddenly realized how terrifying Qin Zhou's methods were. She had just debuted, but she was able to secure important roles in 2 gold medal production teams, The Green Apple and Lethal Beauty. She was well aware that, putting aside her ability, Qin Zhou's methods were also indispensable. If not for Qin Zhou and Lin Fengtian's support, she might not have been able to successfully act in The Green Apple. Similarly, in the production team of Lethal Beauty, Qin Zhou was even more impressive. He had almost taken the lead role for her. Unfortunately, she loved supporting roles more and wanted to challenge this vicious female supporting role. Qin Zhou was often disappointed. However, Yun Shirshir understood that this was the decision she wanted and she would not regret it. Acting was not just a job, it was also her interest. She was excited to challenge every role that had tension. After the casting of Lethal Beauty, there would be an opening ceremony, and she would have to prepare to enter the production team. However, before that, she had to prepare for the Love Diary. This was one of the more important parts of her script. The Love Diary was a reality show on Qingguang's satellite TV about imaginary love. In the show, popular stars formed imaginary lovers and went on an imaginary date show. After the first episode of the show was aired, the first group of imaginary couples quickly became a popular first-tier reality show. Gu Xingze and Yun Shirshir were the second set of imaginary lovers. The production team had great ambitions and expectations for this set of lovers, and saw them as the absolute guarantee of ratings. The script for the reality show had been sent to Yun Shirshir's email 2 days ago. Qin Zhou told her to go back and study it seriously. He also sent people to train her to make a last-minute effort to cultivate her sense of variety. It was a reality show. It was not enough to just have good looks. They had to create topics, gimmicks, and laughs. Therefore, it was a test of an artiste's sense of artistry. The moment Yun Shirshir received the script, she was in a bad mood. The thick stack of scripts made her scalp tingle. She flipped through a few pages. The production team had carefully divided the key points for her. They were very considerate. The Love Diary was divided into 4 units. The first unit was about the heartbeat of first love. In this unit, the 2 artists who were supposed to be a couple first met and started the process of getting to know each other. The script for this unit was especially thick. Of course, even though it was a reality show, the characters were set by the production team. In this reality show, Yun Shirshir had to play the role of an innocent and kind schoolgirl. In short, there was only one word to describe her: silly, naive, and sweet. Silly and sweet. She was already the mother of 2 children, but the production team actually had such a bad taste to give her such a persona. Then, he took a look at Gu Xingze's character profile, the healer and warm-hearted man healer. Yun Shirshir remained expressionless, thinking back to Gu Xingze's usual cold expression. Just treat it as an idle drama. However, before the show started recording, something terrifying happened. Yoon Shirshir received a threatening letter. It was not that she had not received threatening letters before. In the past, when there were rumors about her and Gu Xingze on Weibo, she had received many threatening letters from Gu Xingze's fans. There were countless of them. Chapter 14:23. Some were very uncreative, such as sending razor blades. Some purposely photoshopped her photo into a posthumous photo, clipped it with a chrysanthemum, and wantonly insulted her in the letter. Some even threatened to perish together with her if she did not leave Gu Xingze. She glanced at them and threw them all into the trash can. Initially, when she received the threatening letters, she was still a little afraid and felt her hair stand on end. However, with the endless number of threatening letters, she gradually became numb. Even when she received another threatening letter, she would throw it away without looking at it. However, this threatening letter was a little different. The threatening letter was first handed to her. She could not hold back her curiosity and opened it to take a look. However, just as she opened the letter, she was surprised to smell a strong scent of blood. She glanced at the letter and saw that it was written with blood. It was a letter written in blood. It was really a letter written in blood. The words on the letter were written in dried blood. Every stroke was written with a force that penetrated the back of the paper. Yoon Shirshir, you be *tch. You're just a bitch in heat. Be *tch. If you continue to pester Xingze, you'll be hit by a car, struck by lightning, or torn apart by 5 horses. Son of a be *tch, your whole family will be cremated. Xingze doesn't like you at all. He belongs to our galaxy and doesn't belong to you. Leave him immediately, or else you'll be disfigured by sulfuric acid. All kinds of insults were written on the letter. There were even threats to splash Yoon Shirshir with sulfuric acid to disfigure her. She was so frightened that her hand trembled and her face turned pale. The letter fluttered to the ground. Yoon Shirshir happened to pass by and saw the letter in her hand. She shuddered in fear and bent down to pick up the letter that had fallen to the ground. She could not stop her in time and had already scanned through the letter. The moment she saw the words "whole family will be cremated," her face turned ashen. Her eyes were filled with anger. She was furious. She crumpled the letter into a ball and threw it into the trash can. Her chest heaved violently, unable to calm down. This is too much. How can this be? It's fine if you threaten me, but you even cursed my family? Yoon Shirshir was so angry that her whole body trembled. Her eyes were red and filled with tears. While she felt wronged, she also felt unusually angry. She carefully observed her expression and said with heartache, "Shirshir, don't take it to heart. These people are brainless fans and don't think before they speak. How can I not take it to heart?" Yoon Shirshir retorted angrily, "This person is too much. She even cursed my family to be cremated. She's too uncultured." She had purposely written her name as Corpse Cloud and insulted her as a bitch in heat. Anyone who saw others cursing them like that would be infuriated. She hadn't reached the stage where she could remain calm even after being insulted like this. What was even more unbearable was that this person actually cursed her entire family to be cremated. She was very, as she was a person's people as her. As she was already used to people cursing her, but she couldn't stand it when people cursed her family. Chapter 14:24. This is too much. It's really too much. Yoon Shirshir was so angry that her face turned red. She clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She quickly helped Yoon Shirshir to the sofa and sat her down, comforting her. "Shirshir, don't be angry. We're about to start recording the show. If you're so angry that your face wrinkles, it won't be easy for you to put on makeup." She deliberately teased her, but Yoon Shirshir remained unmoved. She sat stiffly on the sofa with her hands on her knees clenched tightly. Her face seemed to have been painted white and was abnormally pale. Seeing this, she sighed with heartache. She poured a cup of warm water and handed it to her. She slowly said, "Shirshir, actually, as a public figure and an artist, such things will happen more often in the future. You should train yourself to have a stronger mentality. As a public figure, you'll be facing malicious speculation, slander, gossip, and even threats from all directions every day and every moment. There are so many people in this world, and not everyone is kind. Besides, humans are selfish, aren't they? Gu Xingze has a lot of fans. Just the registered fans on the official website alone have reached 100 million, breaking the Guinness Book of Records. Those that haven't been recorded have yet to be counted. With such a large base and such a large fan base, there will definitely be a few people with malicious intentions. She spoke step by step. Yun Shirshir listened quietly, and her body gradually became less stiff. She continued. Shirshir, the reason why you're facing so many malicious speculations and slander is because you're outstanding. Sometimes, an outstanding person will emit a dazzling light that stings the eyes of others. So, you don't have to take this matter to heart. I'll get someone to investigate who sent this letter. No need. Yun Shirshir suddenly forced a smile. There's no need. Just as Shi said, there was really no need to pay attention to such malicious people. Could it be that after a person was bitten by a mad dog, he would still stupidly bite back? She regained her spirit and said lightly, Ask Ding Ning to do my makeup. She smiled. Okay. After comforting Yun Shirshir for a while, she hurriedly went out to find Ding Ning to do her makeup. In preparation for the filming of The Love Diary, the production team specially emphasized that they had to give Yun Shirshir a pure and beautiful look and create the image of the nation's campus belle. Coincidentally, with the release of The Green Apple, the production team could also bask in the popularity of the movie. After Yun Shirshir was done with her makeup, she changed into a pure dress and got ready to record the show. She bumped into Gu Xingze in the corridor. In this episode, Gu Xingze wore a snow-white shirt and looked like the nation's most handsome boy. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but smile when she thought of the character in the script. A warm and caring guy. His attire fit his character very well. Gu Xingze was slightly stunned when he saw her, but he quickly regained his composure. Have you memorized the script? He asked in a low voice, his gaze gentle. Yun Shirshir nodded and then said with a depressed look, I thought that reality shows are all about me acting as myself. I didn't expect that I have to follow the script. Every line is pre-written. If possible, you can also improvise, Gu Xingze said.